He didn't get summoned by fate. He accepted a bet, a challenge to clear the game using the worst protagonist imaginable. Zero talent, trash stats, no connections, and then he woke up inside the game itself. But this isn't a newbie trapped in fantasy. This is a veteran who memorized every system, secret, and artifact. With the martial god's tome in his hands and knowledge as his weapon, he starts breaking the game from the inside. What happens when a hardcore player becomes the successor of the god of war? Let's find out. A blizzard was raging in the winter forest. MC ran forward, leaving bloody footprints behind him, and was almost out of breath. He cursed through clenched teeth and thought that it was unbearably cold here. What was even going on here? Why was he being pursued? An arrow whistled past him. It wounded his leg, and he, looking at his wound, hissed in pain and then fell into the snow. His pursuers caught up with him. He covered his wound with his hand, and the man said that if he was going to run, he should have tried harder. He would do everyone a favor if he just died in peace. He approached him with his students and asked, "Wasn't he right?" MC turned around and thought, when did it all go wrong? If only he hadn't made a bet, he wouldn't have become a character in the game. That day, some guy, a supreme lord, wrote to him and offered him a bet. If he completes the route he offers, he will grant him one wish. MC wondered if it would make him rich. He had never seen anyone offer a bet in the veterans chat before. He opened the character sheet and sighed, thinking that he had finally beaten the game as Yu Baek-jun. He glanced at the chat and wondered where everyone had gone. Heroes Road is a game where gates connected to other worlds appear, and monsters emerge from these gates in herds. The action takes place in the modern world, and players control hunters who fight against these monsters. The game's premiere caused a real stir. Development and adventure in a well-thought-out world, hidden elements, and 5 different characters. Despite being a single-player game, it was extremely popular. However, this did not last long. A year after the release, the number of users who managed to complete the game remained 0. The 5 playable characters died easily, and players had to start from the beginning. It was incredibly difficult, and the average completion rate was 0.1, which is why the game was on a path to destruction. If you break the average completion rate of 0.1%, except for the first character's route and the protagonist, Han Chan-woo, no one has been able to complete the game. In fact, only one user has completed the game as a character named Yu Baek-jun, and that was him. He looked at the screen with a heavy sigh, and a system notification appeared in front of him. Heroes Road is just beginning, and 1 in 200 people are online. Only those who have completed Heroes Road can log in. He thought that there used to be more than 10 people online, so the game really is over. Or had everyone moved to a new chat without him? He would be very sad if that was the case. At that moment, the chat room leader, Supreme Lord, entered the chat. He was surprised that there were still people there. He thought he had kicked everyone out. MC didn't understand what he meant. MC welcomed him to the chat and asked where everyone went. This guy ignored him and said that he made a promise, so he will keep his word. Does he want to make a bet with him? MC was curious if he would make him rich and handsome if he asked, and wrote about it in the chat. Supreme Lord said that he would seriously fulfill his wish, and he asked what would happen if he loses. He told him that he would think about it when it happened, so he wants to try? MC suspected something was wrong, and Supreme Lord said that before he gave an answer, he would ask one more question. Has he already completed the game? He wanted to tell him that he already completed it, but stopped and thought that if he told him this, he would tell everyone and he would miss the chance to brag. It is true what they say. If you remain a hardcore gamer for too long, you turn into an attention seeker. It seems to be true. This could be his only chance to get everyone's attention, and he wasn't going to miss it. He texted him that he'd beaten the game with all the characters except Baek-jun. The Supreme Lord said that of course he wasn't that crazy guy who'd beaten the whole game, so he wanted to make a bet? MC thought he was really suspicious. Well, even if he cheated, he had nothing to lose. He agreed, and the Supreme Lord said that he was the last one, the best of all the players. He smiled and thought that was only natural. After all, he just finished the game as the last character, so it didn't matter what route he offered him. At that moment, everything started to blur before his eyes. He grabbed his head and wondered why his head was spinning so much. He noticed that guy's message on the screen. This is no longer a game. This is about to become his reality. He felt even worse. He fell headfirst onto the keyboard, but before he passed out, he saw another message. Whatever happens, he chose it himself. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in the middle of a winter forest. He immediately got up and looked around, thinking, where is he? He looked at a strand of his hair and wondered, since when did it become so long? When he looked up, he saw several people in front of him, and one of them said that he finally found him. MC immediately recognized him. It was Shin Woo-hyun. He stared at him in a daze and thought, is he really sleeping? Why is he looking straight at the game character? Woo-hyun asked, did he not recognize him? He was his teacher. He said that he would train today, right? MC thought that even his lines were exactly like in the game, and Woo-hyun said that he was sorry, but today's training would be many times harsher than he thought, because his older brother wanted him dead. At that moment, several arrows whistled past MC. He instinctively turned his torso, and one of them cut his arm. He immediately grabbed the wound, hissing in pain, and Woo-hyun pulled out his sword and said that he was aiming for the heart. He didn't expect him to twist like that. Even though he is physically weak, the blood of the holy sword still pulses through his veins. However, his end will be inevitable. As long as he lives, he is incapable of being anything other than a disgrace to his clan. He will kill him here, and it is for his own good. Since he trained him all this time, he will grant him a painless death. MC stared at him in fear and realized that this was happening in reality. This is not a game and not a dream, but how is that possible? He decided not to think about it now, Right now, if he makes a mistake, he will die. He took a deep breath. He needs to calm down. It hurts, and he can feel the blood running down his arm, so this is definitely not a dream. What is even going on here? What is he doing here? And then he remembered that guy's words. This is no longer a game. This will become his reality now. This was one of the last messages he saw. Long hair, and this situation where Woo Hyun is chasing him. Did he really become Yoo Baek-jun? He doesn't know what happened, but first he needs to survive. He's played this game countless times. He just needs to remember. There were many times when he challenged the game as Baek-jun. He looked at the teacher, remembering the beginning of his journey, and ran as fast as he could. Woo Hyun looked after him, thinking about something, and then started chasing. At the moment, the MC fell in the snow. He could no longer run because of the pain, and his teacher said that if he was going to run, he should have tried harder. He would be doing everyone a favor if he just died peacefully. Wouldn't that be right? Baek-jun, breathing heavily, turned to him and thought that there was still a little bit left. Woo Hyun smiled and said that at least he wouldn't be alone on his way to the afterlife. After he killed him, he would kill his servants, including Choi Sung-min. Does he have any last words? One of his subordinates noticed that the blizzard had suddenly gotten stronger and peered into the snow curtain. The MC stood up and wondered what his last words were. He called Woo Hyun a loser and told him to go to hell, which took him by surprise. Then, a black wolf jumped out of the snow curtain and attacked him. Woo Hyun quickly reacted and dealt with it with his sword, then looked at the beast's body and wondered, is this an ice wolf? Did they attract the beast's attention with their screams? At that moment, the screams of his disciples were heard behind him. He turned around and saw a pack of wolves tearing them apart. He wondered if they were that scared of some pack of ice wolves. Most of the people here wouldn't be of much use in the future. He was getting pretty fed up with these screams and wolves, so he decided to deal with them quickly. But first, he needed to take care of Baek-jun. When he turned around, he was no longer there. Meanwhile, he hid in a safer spot and dug a couple of medicinal herbs out of the snow, pressing them to the wound on his leg, but the pain didn't subside. He wondered if he had mixed the wrong herbs. This pain was unbearable. A status window appeared in front of him, and the system told him that despite his inexperience, thanks to his outstanding medical skills, he had created a new ointment. He looked at it in surprise, and the system told him that his wounds were healing, and he would gain temporary high resistance to cold. Right after that, his wounds started to glow, the pain started to slowly subside, and he sighed with relief, thinking that he had mixed them correctly after all. Well, that makes sense. He's not sure about the other characters, but he'll never forget Yoo Baek-jun's route. He spent 2 years completing that route. He looked at the sky and thought, things are bad. Why Baek-jun? The Holy Sword Clan is located on Mount Seoraksan in Korea. This clan was founded by a skilled warrior, nicknamed the God of War, who helped resolve the gate incident that occurred long ago. The warrior disappeared sometime later, but despite this, the Holy Sword Clan rapidly developed thanks to the books he left behind and firmly established itself as a respected clan in Korea. One of the 5 children with the right of succession in this family is Yoo Baek-jun. And now the difficulty is much higher compared to when he played on the other side. Thanks to an herbal ointment, he saved himself from blood loss and a cold death, but the effect will last a maximum of 30 minutes. He needs to think. There is no time, and every decision will affect his fate. He just saw a message. It means the hero's road system still exists. He tried to open the status window and his expectations were met. The system really did exist, which made him very happy. Now all stats are minimal, innate abilities, characteristics, and skills are missing. His face darkened slightly, and he thought that he had no idea, but when your life depends on it, it's bad. In this world, he's a ragged nobody. Because Baek-jun's route starts with a fatal wound, it makes him even more miserable. If he lets his guard down for even a moment or makes the slightest mistake, he'll die. There's also the danger of severe bleeding, and on top of that, he's being pursued. He bought himself some time thanks to the ice wolves, but Shin Woo-yun can't be broken by that. He has an artifact, so finding him is only a matter of time. He stood up and thought that his skills are at their worst, and he has nothing on him. So what should he do to survive? And looking ahead, what should he do to stay alive until the end of the route? There's only one answer, the labyrinth forest. There's definitely a way out there. Meanwhile, Woo Hyun and his subordinates dealt with a pack of wolves, and when his pendant began to glow, the girl told him that his magical tracking artifact had activated. Woo Hyun glanced at this and, calling Baek-jun a rat, said he would do everything to catch and kill him this time. He was heading to the labyrinth forest, and now everyone needed to prepare to risk their lives. He looked at the sky and thought that this was necessary to be recognized by Yoo Tae-rang and take this position. MC, meanwhile, ran as fast as he could. In the world of Heroes Road, monsters are humanity's main enemy. They are exterminated by hunters. Depending on the shape of the gate and the monsters, the difficulty varies. There are different categories: easy, medium, and hard. All hunters find one area difficult and avoid it. And that area is right here, on Mount Seoraksan. Noticing movement among the trees, he hid, and a huge white snake, prowling here in search of prey, slithered past him. He cautiously peered out from his hiding place and thought that there was no hell on earth like this place. Since monsters had built their own ecosystem and lived in it like animals, this remote mountainous area had become a place that hunters avoided. Obviously, but the current weakling Yoo Baek-jun shouldn't come here unguarded. After waiting for the monster to leave, he emerged from hiding and continued on, wondering how he'd ended up on the mountain in the first place. Teacher Shin Woo-hyun had taught Baek-jun since childhood, but he supported his brothers instead. While those brothers were away, he was ordered to kill Baek-jun. To do this, he led him high up on Mount Seoraksan. In other words, the player needs to survive these snowy slopes and return home. This is the standard method for completing Yu Baekjun's route at the beginning. He saw a stone tablet among the trees and thought he had finally found it. The reason he had been wandering here all this time instead of returning to the clan house was because of the mountain's secret. There is a place here that no one knows about. In the labyrinth forest, high on the mountain, lies a hidden opportunity. The tablet says that those who do not have the courage to lose their lives, and those who do not have an icy composure and a broad outlook, are better off leaving this place. Despite the warning, MC continued on, and soon Woohyun and the others arrived here. The girl looked at him and asked, "Are they really going to enter the labyrinth forest? Many people have come here and died. Will the same fate befall them too?" He said that he understands that she does not like this idea, but he needs to prove his demise. She should not worry. They have an artifact from young master Yu Taerang, so they will not get lost. In fact, something was bothering him during the entire chase. Since when did Baekjun become so bold? It was like he became a different person. He looked down at the snow and said that he was moving. His tracks were not yet covered by the snow, which meant that he had passed here recently, and he couldn't have gone far because of his wounds. They would catch up with him and destroy him immediately. They walked forward for a while without any incidents. Then he suddenly signaled for everyone to stop and looked to the side, saying that they would go there. While they were running, one of his students called out to him and said that they seemed to be walking in circles around one place. "Is this definitely the right path?" He asked if she had forgotten where they were. She didn't understand what he meant, and at that moment, she stepped on someone's body. She looked at it, after which her teacher said that this was a labyrinth forest. It was impossible to say for sure whether they were going on the right path or in a circle. The man whose face they just saw has probably wandered here hundreds of times, even thousands, and eventually died. That's the nature of this labyrinth. If you don't want to wander here until you die, stay alert. Meanwhile, MC kept running. He stopped briefly to catch his breath and then continued walking, thinking that he felt like he was about to die. At that moment, he truly understood how amazing medicinal herbs were, but more importantly, this feeling, he knew about it instinctively. He turned around at his footprints and the drops of blood in the snow and thought that he really could die here. That idiot Supreme Lord. He should have warned him about such a risk in advance. He was deceived, but still, it was his choice. Then again, what does it matter? He also lied about not having completed the game. He continued walking, shivering from the cold, and thought that he was at the limit of his endurance. He looked around, thinking that this place must be here, and peered into the snow in front of him, raging among the trees. He walked forward and said with a grin that he had finally found the end of the labyrinth. There was a cliff in front of him. He walked to the very edge and looked down, thinking that when he first came here, he felt nothing but despair. Every time he thought he had found a way out, there were only rocks there. He thought he had just wasted his time, but it turned out that that experience had helped him a lot. Now he needed to remain constantly focused. Now was the perfect time for him to appear. At that moment, his teacher's voice rang out, calling out to him and asking if he had run all the way here. Baekjun smiled nervously, noticing in his mind that he had even stopped addressing him as young master. And Woohyun asked if after all that running, he would finally come to the cliff. Unfortunately, his senseless resistance would end here and now. MC asked why he was doing this to him. Had he become Yu Taerang's dog? His teacher smirked and asked, did he just realize it? It was true. He had decided to support young master Yu Taerang. His strength truly befitted the Holy Sword clan. Baekjun frowned slightly and thought he had a premonition, so he tried to get a reaction from him, and now he was sure that everything here was just like in the game itself. Since he had confirmed it, it would be dangerous to waste any more time. If he hesitated any longer, he would freeze to death. Suddenly, he felt very ill, fell to one knee, and didn't even realize it at first. Only when he saw the bloody snow beneath him did he realize that frostbite wasn't the problem. At this rate, he would die from blood loss first. Woohyun said that this whole conversation had taken too long. He would die before he could deliver the finishing blow. Instead of letting him die a slow and painful death, he would end everything instantly. This would be his last act of mercy. His sword was enveloped in energy. Meanwhile, the MC barely stood up and said that he was so kind. Since this was the end, he would tell him something. Woohyun became wary, and when he saw his hand, he realized something was wrong. He called him an idiot and said that the artifact on his neck was disposable, after which Woohyun immediately threw his sword at him, and he jumped off the cliff. The sword still managed to reach him, leaving a deep cut on his torso, and then Baekjun fell down. All that remained of him on the cliff was a pool of blood. One of the students said that he thought he was dead, and Woohyun said that they could not even restore his body, so they should go back. Although he did not know if young master Yu Taerang would believe him. He twisted the artifact and waited a few seconds, but seeing that it didn't activate, he became nervous and thought that this couldn't be true. Was Baekjun telling the truth? The monsters were drawn to the scent of blood. Upon hearing them, they immediately turned around and became very nervous, preparing for battle. Meanwhile, MC flew through a portal and fell into some dungeon. His wounds immediately made themselves known. He coughed up blood, and while he was trying to cope with the with a pain, a glow appeared in front of him. He slowly looked up and saw a book hovering in the air in front of him. He grabbed it and thought that he needed to recover quickly, but he quickly lost consciousness and fell. After that, the system informed him that the Book of the God of War confirmed his qualifications. The blood connection was confirmed. The Book of the God of War confirmed his physical characteristics. He is a person with 0 talent. After that, his body was lifted into the air, and it flared with bright energy, and the system announced that the forced awakening of the dormant blood of the God of War through this system was beginning. His eyes opened and began to glow, after which the entire dungeon was illuminated by a bright flash. The book states that the one who opened it is most likely one of his descendants, whose name he does not know. While he was alive, he sought to capture all martial techniques in this world, but in his later years, he decided to leave this book to his descendants. Even after his death, it should continue to record new martial arts appearing in the world, and therefore, he asks the owner of this book to use it for good. Baekjun smiled, thinking of his ancestor, and told him that he would now use it for honest deeds. After that, the system notified him of the receipt of unique abilities. Since he received the Book of the God of War, he acquired a special feature. He successfully mastered the celestial martial physique, his body automatically improving thanks to his abilities. All his stats have been increased. His stats are still at the minimum value, but he now has an EX rank unique ability and an S rank feature. He does not have any skills yet. He looked at his wounds with a smile and thought that it seemed like his body had recovered, so it worked. His rank had increased, and more importantly, he had acquired a powerful unique ability and trait. There are no levels in Hero's Road. Instead, everything is earned through grinding. Traits, job qualifications, absolutely everything. This is no easy task. The Baekjun route is one of the hardest in this game, known for its extreme difficulty. What makes this route passable are the acquisition of unique abilities and traits. They are the reason he came so far, risking his life. The first trait he will have to learn is the Celestial Combat Physique. It gives him a talent for martial arts bestowed by the heavens and a body ideal for it. It significantly increases reaction speed and the learning of combat techniques, and it also increases power. This trait increases the speed of stat growth and the speed of skill learning, in addition to periodically unlocking new ones and further strengthening his strength. This trait is simply unbeatable. It will significantly contribute to his growth. And finally, a unique ability. The Book of the God of War. This book was written in the final days of a warrior who ascended to the level of a martial god. All subsequent martial techniques, including those that never existed before, are automatically recorded in the book. He can absorb accumulated points to learn the skills recorded in the book. Unique abilities are special powers that only one person can possess. They cannot be passed on through training or exchange, and no one else can learn or copy them. His unique ability was extremely powerful. If a skill exists in this world, it can be learned through this ability. They are not limited to just arts, be it a martial art or even a fantasy technique. As long as it is applicable in combat, it can be learned. He closed the system window and thought that it was a bit of a pity that he couldn't learn magic or alchemy, but there were other ways to do that. First of all, since he had received the points, he needed to look at them. Currently, he had 100 available points. He could accept a new quest. He can spend these points on acquiring new skills, such as the Triple Sword Technique, Bash, Charge, and Rafelda Principality Spear Mastery. However, all of this is useless to him now. He doesn't need sword techniques. In his current state, fighting is tantamount to death. However, he still found something suitable in this list. Movement technique is a martial art that makes the body lighter, improving speed, agility, and reflexes. This is a basic skill that is useful for both fleeing and fighting. It is good for everything. And since the Book of the God of War has increased his mastery, he can do some interesting things with this technique. After that, he decided to choose a quest. The system gave him 2 options: catch me if you can, and forgive me my ancestor. Please help me become a righteous bandit just for today. He decided to choose the second option and put the first one off until later, and thought that the second quest had a terrible title. After that, a secret passage opened next to him. The second quest unlocks a complex, labyrinth-like path. If he finds the exit, early stage rewards will await him at his destination. Essentially, it's the reward for the Tomb of the War God. He smiled and thought it was easy as pie, then headed toward the passage and wondered how Shin Wuyan was doing. He better escape from there. Meanwhile, the monsters had defeated his entire squad, and now they were wandering through the forest looking for him while he hid on a tree branch. He looked at them in horror, then heard a sound from the side and slowly looked away. A huge white snake's mouth appeared in front of him, after which the branch emptied and blood spattered on it. MC, meanwhile, thought that he had probably already escaped from the labyrinth forest. After all, getting out wasn't that easy. He laid out the herbs in front of him and examined them, thinking that he had gotten everything he needed: sun root, fire spirit root, and even fire ginseng. Relieved that he'd definitely collected everything, he smiled and decided to open the chest nearby and complete the quest. Inside the chest, he found a 1,000-year-old snow ginseng and a treasure guardian's pouch. The system immediately notified him that he'd collected the tomb's treasures. The quest was complete, and he received 500 points and the Black Demon Robe as a reward. The war god's tomb had fulfilled its purpose and would be destroyed, so he better return to the surface. A bundle of clothes appeared next to him, and he glanced at it with a smile, thinking that there was a certain romanticism to it. A tomb under a roof. Isn't that a wuxia cliché? It perfectly suits the war god. The problem is, secret inheritances are always hidden in absurd places like the labyrinth forest. After all, it's fair enough. The greater the difficulty, the better the reward. He donned the robe, which possessed powerful powers. It was crafted by a great master from rare materials. The fabric is incredibly durable. Parameters: demonic appearance, adaptability. Demonic appearance greatly increases defensive power and restores seriously damaged parts. Adaptability is designed to adapt to any environment and increases the wearer's survivability. He thanked the tomb for the items and then moved outside. Night soon fell. In the Holy Sword clan, a guy was now sitting in the observation post of the main gate, playing on his phone. Someone called him to eat ramen, and he, without looking up from his phone, said that he was on his way. He fought a monster and was suddenly defeated, which made him a little angry and asked, "What kind of pattern is this? This is abnormal." Noticing movement to the side, he looked out the window and saw a guy pressed against the glass. At first, he thought it was a monster, but quickly realized it was young Master Baekjun and was very surprised. The MC asked him to bring Choi Sunmin to him, and he asked in surprise, why? Unable to bear it any longer, Baekjun irritably called him an idiot and ordered him to bring him here immediately, after which he lost consciousness. In the dark night, he continued to run through the forest, and his pursuers did not leave him alone. The glint of an arrow appeared behind him. He turned around, and the sharp tip pierced his body. It was a dream. That night, when he lost consciousness, he was transferred to the clan, and his faithful servant was very worried about him all this time. Sungmin asked the doctor if he thought he would wake up. He had been sleeping for 5 days already. Ju Jungwon sighed with displeasure and said that he was so impatient, they needed to wait a little longer. As he had already said, the injury was not the reason. The guy thought for a moment and asked, if that wasn't the case, then what was it? The doctor said that he was not sure. He didn't know what exactly happened to him, but there were no visible wounds on him. In fact, he looks healthier than before. Sungmin noted that he doesn't look fine. Jungwon assumed it was all a nightmare, and at that moment, Baekjun's eyes flew open, and he jumped out of bed with a loud scream. The nightmare had him covered in cold sweat, and his breathing had quickened. They were both overjoyed that he had finally woken up, and he, looking at them in confusion, asked, "Is this a dream within a dream?" Sungmin didn't understand what he was talking about, and the MC quickly jumped out of bed and opened the window, taking in the view. The clan's disciples were training in the training grounds while others were heading out on gate-clearing missions. Baekjun, shocked, asked where he was, and the healer told him they were currently in the Saint's clan and his house. His words made the MC feel sick. He bowed his head sadly and realized it wasn't a dream. Jungwon noted that he was disoriented. Was he in pain? He immediately looked up at him and told him that he had a slight headache. The doctor headed for the exit and said that he needed medicines. He would bring them now. Sungmin followed him to get him food, but Baekjun asked him to wait, and he immediately stopped, asking if he needed anything else. He asked what day it was, and he said that he slept for 4 days, so today is January 15th, 2035. Since he had no questions left, he left. And MC glanced nervously at the system notification about the mission completion that had just appeared in front of him and said that this could not be a dream. He had just returned home safely. When Sungmin arrived, he began to eat and think about what he would do now. He returned home as he wanted, but it was not that this place was any safer than the snowy plains. After all, this is an annex of the Holy Sword clan's estate, where many fight for supremacy with their fists. Children of powerful clans fight for power within their clan. This is the eternal epicenter of conflicts. Yu Taerang, the eldest son, Yu Junghyun, the eldest daughter, Yu Kangho, the third son, Yu Min, the fourth daughter, and Yu Baekjun, the youngest child. There used to be 3 more children, but they were killed at the behest of Yu Taerang. This is a typical power struggle among siblings. It is logical to assume that Yu Taerang will become the heir. He is highly likely to become the next patriarch, and all the other heirs are well aware of this. So the smart Kangho teamed up with his older brother, while Junhyun was almost in despair, and Min had no interest in fighting for the throne. So why did he kill his 3 younger brothers? Taerang decided to be vigilant, not to miss any possible danger, and to put an end to the succession dispute. He is the master of all this chaos. He leaves no one a chance, and forming a coalition between the other heirs against him is out of the question. In other words, he strives for absolute power. Putting a piece of meat in his mouth, he thought it was so delicious and returned to the topic. To summarize, the main villain in Baekjun's path is Taerang, the eldest son. Today is January 15th, 2035. The same date as in the game. In 2 years, Yu Muhak, his father, will hand over the throne as the patriarch of the Taerang clan. If he doesn't do something about him by then, he will do everything to kill him. He rose from the table and said out loud that he had 2 years. He won't be able to drag it out any longer. Once Taerang takes over the position of clan head, his power will be firmly cemented. Sungmin approached the table, saying he would wash the dishes, and MC stepped aside, thanking him for the food. He then reflected that Taerang had left to deal with the gate on Mount Seoraksan and would return in exactly 2 months. He took his bag of belongings and told the servant that he would be back soon, and the servant worriedly replied that he had not yet fully recovered. Baekjun thought that he should become as strong as possible before his older brother returned. In this family, only the strong can rule. In other words, if he becomes stronger, the clan will recognize him. And fortunately, the Holy Sword clan has many great teachers. With this thought, he approached the healer's room and glanced at the sign with a smile. Then he went inside, thinking that first he needed to become stronger. Meanwhile, the healer was grinding herbs in a mortar on the 2nd floor, and was distracted by Baekjun's voice. He apologized to him for entering without permission, and said that he went up to the 2nd floor because he couldn't find him downstairs. If he didn't mind, Could he keep an eye on him? The first thing he wanted to do in order to quickly gain strength was to become a doctor's apprentice. Jungwon was slightly surprised by his desire and said that he was interested in his current condition. The old man looked at him with bewilderment, and he thought that he was a doctor who had worked for the clan during the reign of the previous head. He not only loves his work, but is also unusually gifted. He does not participate in the clan's power struggle. The only thing he cares about is collecting herbs and producing medicines, and he still had no apprentices. He could have found a student if he wanted. But there was a reason for that. He studied the medical art all his life and wanted to pass it on to the people of the clan. But the problem was that no one from the clan wanted to learn medicine. As a result, he never found a student. However, what if he obtained an elixir that would help him become many times stronger? For this, he would need the pharmacist Ju Jungwon's skill in making oriental medicines. The old man smiled and said that creating this new medicine took him much longer than he planned. He was sorry. His body had weakened with age, making it difficult for him to be efficient. MC told him that everything was fine, and Jungwon asked if maybe he was interested in herbalism. He knew. It didn't look like it, but he was very old. He shouldn't give the old man hope in vain. Bakjun said that he was indeed interested in herbalism, and Jungwon froze in surprise. MC said that he actually taught himself from books, and from the aroma coming from his mortar, he could tell that it was a combination of a peaceful herb and a sleepy flower. Judging by the smell, he could guess that the medicine he was creating helps relieve headaches and restore peace of mind. He thought that becoming a doctor's apprentice wouldn't be difficult. He just needed to demonstrate his knowledge of herbs. The old man asked in surprise, can he identify the composition by smell? He confirmed this and said that books don't provide all the knowledge, so he obtained and consumed the herbs himself. He remembered the smell of those he had tried several times. But there was another strange smell. Apparently, he had added the screaming herb. It was poisonous. Jungwon excitedly confirmed this, saying that he had added them for a specific reason. Although they were poisonous, if burned and then the poison removed, they turned into an herb that helped restore a lot of energy. Now he saw a bright light in Baekjun and thought that the young master's talent was not for martial arts at all, but for saving people's lives. But this light immediately went out, and he looked down in disappointment and thought that he could have taken up this if only he weren't the heir of the clan. The MC asked if Sungmin had told him how he ended up in this state. He replied that he had heard that he had gone for a walk alone and had been attacked by monsters. Baekjun glanced at him with a slight squint and thought that he had known it all along and was unaware of the assassination attempt. He said that, to be honest, thanks to this incident, he felt the importance of medicines like never before. They were incredibly useful in dangerous situations. It was a pity that he hadn't had the chance to study them properly. He needed to study harder. Hearing this, the old man looked at him hopefully and offered to teach him if that was what he wanted. The MC pretended to be slightly surprised and said that he was so busy. He laughed and replied that he wasn't that busy. If he was the one teaching him, he was willing to put everything aside for it. He asked if he was really willing to do that. He confirmed this and said that he couldn't teach him everything from the start, so he would see how much he already knew. Baekjun said that he was honored to accept this offer from him, and he responded that, on the contrary, it was an honor for him to be able to teach him. After that, he gave Baekjun the medicine he had just made, and he left. The system said that he had become Ju Jungwon's apprentice, the pharmacist. Let him show more knowledge about medicines to the pharmacist. He takes his craft very seriously. If he continues at the same pace, he can gain the expert knowledge of an outstanding pharmacist. He thought that now he needed to pass the test he had given him. If he just came to him a few times, maybe he could learn the skill of making oriental medicines. He had done this hundreds of times, so there should be no problem. Jungwon can definitely be trusted. He lacks the thirst for power, unlike Shin Woo-hyun, and he could say the same about Sungmin. He cured his family by asking Jungwon for help, so he feels indebted to him. However, due to his lack of martial arts talent, he has been acting as a servant for the past year. He will never betray him, that's enough. He decided to see what he should do now. The system gave him the quest, first steps to getting rid of a skeletal body. He's not just skinny, he's scrawny. Using heavenly combat physique would be nothing more than casting pearls before swine. He needs to run for at least 50 hours. As a reward, he'll receive 50 points and a stat boost. He tiredly rubbed the bridge of his nose, realizing that nothing but suffering awaited him in the future. After that, he told his servant that he was going to training, and he asked, in surprise, is that true? He put on his sneakers and confirmed it, saying that he would train and he could stay here. Sungmin asked why he suddenly decided to start training, and MC replied that that's exactly what he was talking about. It shouldn't surprise anyone that he was going to train. His father constantly told him that he was weak and inept, that he couldn't believe that he was his son. Only the strongest survive here. The Holy Sword clan is like a beast kingdom. The logic of strength rules in this family, and no one is exempt from it, including your blood. Yu Baekjun was very kind. Not only was he untalented in the martial arts, which the clan considers the most important aspect, but he was also kind and easygoing by nature. From childhood, everyone looked down on him, and this continues to this day. He walked out onto the training playing field and the other students started mocking him, and he thought that their current reaction reflected his current situation. He can't believe that even the novice students don't take him seriously. Someone said that if he were an elder, he would also disown him, and he thought that in his place, he would do the same. He could live an ordinary life, enjoying his books, but it can't be helped. That's the way of the Holy Sword clan. He warmed up and decided that now everything would be different. And then he prepared himself. He knows the technique, although he's not sure he can move as he wants. After that, he broke into a run. The Qinggong technique is a martial art that makes the body lighter and improves speed, reflexes, and strength. Picking up speed, he smiled and thought that this is it. He felt it when he returned to the clan from the tomb of the god of war. It's quite convenient that he can use this skill whenever he wants. It's much more real than he thought. But very soon he was exhausted. He could barely walk and thought that he was going to die. Is this really a human body? A system window appeared in front of him, informing him that he had completed the first steps of getting rid of a bony body. As a reward, he was given 50 points and a boost in strength. He would soon receive the second part of the quest. He fell exhausted to his knees and thought that he had finally finished. It was not easy at all. But still, the result of these 6 hours was better than he expected. Such a relief. Now his stats had risen, his strength, agility, and endurance had risen to rank C, and his magic to D. He glanced at the system window, wondering what to do next. And suddenly, a mocking voice of a guy was heard behind him, asking what was that smell in here. He kept wondering where that rotting body smell was coming from, but it was just his brother's sweat. MC turned around and realized it was Yu Kang-ho. But what was he doing here? Now was the time for him to come out. He smiled and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. He was training here. Kang-ho noted with a smirk that they really hadn't seen each other for a long time. There was no way they would have been able to meet if he sat locked in his room 24 hours a day, as usual. But why did he need training? Baekjun thought that he was only a few years older than him, but he acted so arrogantly. His brother said that an idiot who trains never stops being an idiot, and he asked with a smile, "Is that true?" He thought this idiot was talking like a stupid snob. The third son of the Holy Sword clan, Yu Kang-ho, is known as the main prankster in the clan. He constantly spends money and is promiscuous with women. A guy who provokes troubles every time he leaves the house. He said that he was recently attacked by a monster, so he took up training, or worse would happen. His brother asked, "Is he serious?" He thinks it's a waste of time, but if he needs help, he should just let him know. After that, he kneed him in the face, causing him to fall, and turned to him with a smirk, saying that he would kindly help him, just like in the past. After that, he left with his friends, and the MC stood up, menacingly telling him after he left that he would be dead to him. He wanted to answer him, but it was not yet time. He wiped the blood from his nose and, looking at the system window, thought that now he needed to become stronger. It was time for the second part of the quest. He had increased his endurance, but he had a long way to go. One more round. This time he would have 3 hours of strength training. As a reward, he would also receive 50 points and a stat boost. He went to training, and when he had time to rest, he began studying the book. There is a skill called Strike. It costs 100 points. With it, he can put mana into a fist or weapon, which will strike the enemy with force. Triple Mind Technique. A sad and pitiful technique, but it can teach the user how to use mana. Triple Fist Technique is a martial art that only back alley thugs learn. The user can learn 3 basics: jabs, elbow strikes, and uppercut. These 2 skills cost 50 points each. He received 50 points from the War God's tomb and earned 100 from today's quest to dispose of the bony body. By tomorrow, he will have enough points to learn that skill. This is one of Yun Solna's, an A-rank hunter's, techniques, attribute demonstration. Even though it's an A-rank skill, it only costs 500 points. This technique is what the demonic sword master used to imbue his weapon with his excess mana. But because it absorbs an insane amount of mana, it's quite difficult to use. It shows how well it combines with the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng. On the other hand, the triple fist and triple mind techniques are useless compared to attributes demonstration. Even if he trains to the point of exhaustion, it's still a third-rate martial art. But the reason he's learning it is simple: the upcoming event. So, while he worked diligently to rid himself of his bony body, he continuously demonstrated his knowledge of medicine to the doctor. He went to the doctor as usual and described the plant he showed him. It's an invasive herb. It contains a paralyzing poison. If you eat it, you can suffocate. However, if you wash it and then dry it, it will give you energy. He looked up at the old man's face and, seeing his happy eyes, realized that he had passed his medical test. After studying with the doctor and repeatedly getting rid of his bony body for 4 days, only then did he obtain the B-rank Oriental Medicine Development skill. With expert knowledge of development, he is able to combine ingredients to create medicine. If he uses this skill when crafting Oriental medicine, it will have effects 1.5 times stronger than normal. Thanks to his acquired outstanding knowledge of Oriental medicine, he will be granted additional effects. He glanced at the system window with a smile, and the healer said that he was now a great pharmacist, more talented than most. Baekjun looked at him with some surprise, and thought that, despite the status window being open, he hadn't mentioned it. Perhaps only he could see it, like in the game. He had doubts before, but now he was sure. However, something else was important now. He smiled and answered the old man that it was all thanks to his lessons. He wanted to prepare a certain medicine. He could help him, right? The old man laughed and asked what he wanted to create. After that, MC laid out the herbs he had collected on the table and the old man's eyes sparkled with delight. In front of him lay 1,000-year-old snow ginseng, sun root, fire spirit root, and even fire ginseng. He looked up at the young master in surprise and asked, "Is this the reason the monsters attacked him?" He smiled awkwardly and apologized for not telling him about it from the beginning. Jungwon said it was okay. He understood. He would have done the same. After all, it was 1,000-year-old snow ginseng. Baekjun thanked him for his understanding, after which the old man said he had never seen anything like it in his life. But the energy emanating from it definitely belonged to 1,000-year-old snow ginseng. What medicine did he want to prepare? He replied that he wanted to make a pill that would bring the yang energy to its peak, so much so that it would suppress the yin energy of the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng. Jungwon began to guess what he wanted to do, and he said he would eat the 1,000-year-old ginseng. The old man said that he had heard he had been training hard these past few days, so all this was so that he could consume this plant? He smiled and suggested that he begin right away, after which they got down to business. His oriental medicine development skill activated. As he was assisted by someone with an exceptional level of this skill, its effect would be amplified. Soon, the two of them were able to create the strongest yang pill, and MC began preparing to consume the ginseng. He thought that at first, he hadn't known that this was how the herbs received as a reward from the tomb of the god of war were used. Jungwon said that he would observe, and if the situation seemed dangerous, he would call someone for help. He agreed and asked him to help if it became dangerous, then turned his gaze to the pill, took it, and bit into it. As soon as he swallowed it, a fire ignited in his body. The old man nervously watched the energy rage within him, but did not interfere. Baekjun gritted his teeth trying to cope with the heat. It was unbearably hot, but he knew he had to hold on. It wasn't time yet. The yang energy hadn't yet spread throughout his body. He needed to wait for it to begin circulating in every cell. His eyes widened, realizing that this was the moment, and he bit into the ginseng. Immediately after, the heat gave way to a terrible cold. The yin energy began to freeze every meridian of his body, and he thought he needed to direct the energy more calmly. Noticing something amiss, the old man called out to him worriedly, after which his body rose and a chill filled the room. He worriedly said that this was not good. He would immediately call for help, but MC pulled himself together and concentrated, containing the energy, and Jungwon thought in surprise, is this a cultivation technique? But it didn't look like the one used in the Holy Sword clan. Baekjun used the triple mind technique. It's a sad and pitiful technique, but it could help him learn how to use mana. The energy around him began to slowly calm down, and he no longer felt sick. The old man looked at him in surprise and thought that this was impossible. It was circulating. He couldn't believe his own eyes. It was already a miracle that he was able to take 1,000-year-old snow ginseng, but on top of that, he even managed to perform a cultivation technique. MC frowned slightly and then opened his eyes. After a short conversation with the healer, he went home. Before he left, Jungwon asked him how he trained his cultivation technique, and he lied that he simply imitated someone else's performance. But the old man's eyes sparkled with delight and he looked away. For now, he thought he had managed to hide it, so it shouldn't be a problem. Although he had overestimated it too much. He arrived at the training ground and looked around, thinking that this place was quite suitable. After that, he opened the status window and looked at his progress. His mana rank had risen to B, and he'd even received a buff from elixirs. Now he decided to use that very skill, Attributes Demonstration. It can manifest as an aura through the fusion of strength and mana. Yun Songa is one of the mentioned characters who appears in the hero's journey. Her unique ability is Dragon Hearts, which allows her to generate an insane amount of mana. Gathering his strength in his fist, he slammed the floor with all his might, causing it to crack and everything around him to freeze. Ice crystals hung in the air around him. He glanced at the mark left by his strike and thought that he had thought so. Since it's an A-rank skill, it's very powerful. However, it requires an incredible amount of mana. His breathing immediately quickened, and he fell to one knee, exhausted, and thought that this was to be expected, since Attributes Demonstration was a skill created by Yoon Songha to control excess mana. He stood up and thought that he managed to avoid dire consequences only thanks to the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't even think of using such a skill. He looked at the sky and thought that she should be in the USA at this time. He would be interested in meeting her later. And now it was time for him to prepare for the main event. Morning came. Sungmin, still sleepy, brought him breakfast and said that he started getting up so early. Because of this, he couldn't sleep properly lately. He asked if the clan was doing something this morning. He answered that today was Sunday, so the clan members would be watching the training. They also asked if they wanted to join them, but he declined their offer. The last time he did this was when he was a child. Baekjun looked in the mirror and said that he would go today, which surprised his servant greatly, and he asked if participating was his duty as a member of the clan, wasn't it? Sungmin confirmed this, but he had only witnessed it once when he was a child, and afterward he said he never wanted to see anything like that again. So the clan leader became furious. The MC told him to stop and asked, there's only an hour left until the start, right? You'd go get ready, and he should tell them he'd be coming. Soon they went to the training ground. Baekjun walked confidently forward, and Sungmin trudged awkwardly behind him. Seeing them, the students were surprised and asked, what's going on? He came to observe the morning practice. This couldn't be true. The MC thought it was an ancient tradition of the Holy Sword clan. New students of the clan practice in groups every morning, and combat instructors and members of the Holy Sword clan's family oversee the training. But in his opinion, this tradition is useless. He went up to the seats of the heirs and, looking at the clan leader's seat, saw Yu Mohawk, her father there. He immediately felt a serious pressure emanating from him. Instructors were standing next to him. His older sister called out to him and said that she heard he was attacked by monsters. Is he okay? It was Yu Junyan, the clan's eldest daughter. He smiled, thanking her for her concern, and said that he was fine. He was able to recover thanks to the healer's help. Kangho sighed heavily and called him a loser. A member of the Holy Sword clan was on the verge of death after an attack by some monsters. He was a disgrace to their family. Baekjun smiled nervously and remained silent, thinking that he needed to restrain himself. Right now, he better think about the good things. He turned his gaze to the girl sitting next to him. It was Yu Min, the clan's fourth daughter. Kangho still didn't finish his mockery and said that some people saw him. He began visiting the healing room frequently. He became interested in medicine when he had no talent for swordsmanship. That's just right for someone like him who doesn't do anything but read books. The MC trembled with anger and sighed heavily, thinking that he had tried to start softly, but it seemed he would have to get to the main event early. His brother looked at him with disgust and said that he was nothing but pathetic trash. After training, let him follow him. He would kill him. That is, teach him proper swordsmanship. Baekjun looked at him with displeasure and asked if he could shut his mouth. Everyone looked at him in surprise at this, and there was silence for a few seconds. And then Kangho asked what he said. The MC said that he could smell his bad breath even from here. Hadn't he noticed how the smell of his mouth had changed after all those cigarettes and coffee? Kangho was shocked by his response, and Baekjun, stepping aside, smirked and advised him to brush his teeth more thoroughly if he had time to chase girls, and he shouldn't forget to brush his tongue. Junhyun let out a quiet laugh, and her brother began shaking with anger, loudly calling him an idiot and asking, is he tired of living? Seeing him kneel before the clan leader, he immediately fell silent. He turned to his father and said he had a request. He would like to study martial arts, and so, the time had come for his first main mission. After that, training began, but all the instructors and the clan leader's children were watching their conversation. Mahak glared at him and asked, what is he doing here? This was not the place for someone with neither interest nor talent in martial arts. Baekjun said he had recently shown interest in them, and he asked if he, who had always claimed not to want to learn techniques for killing people, was now interested in this. MC answered that he admitted that he had said so before, but having found himself on the brink of death, he changed his mind. Instead of dying without the ability to do anything, he wanted to learn martial arts to fight for his survival. He let go of all the foolish thoughts he had. His father asked, so what now? He confidently answered that he would like to study martial arts with one of the 4 instructors. They looked at him, not daring to interfere in their conversation, and then Kangho jumped up from his seat and ordered him to stop joking. He thought someone like him had the right to learn from their instructors. It was so ridiculous that even a stray dog would laugh. Muhak said that his talent for martial arts was negligible. It would be a waste of time to train someone with such a useless talent, especially if his teacher was a combat instructor. Baekjun asked with a smile, but what if he does have talent? Muhak was slightly intrigued by him and thought he knew exactly what he would say. He declared that he would prove himself talented enough to train with a martial arts instructor. He inquired how exactly he planned to prove himself, and rising from his knees, he turned to his brother and thought it was time for the first main event. He declared that in exactly 1 week he would defeat his brother Kangho in sparring. The guy looked at him in shock, after which Kangho laughed and asked discontentedly, is he making fun of me? He never thought he would hear such nonsense from a brat who had never even come close to martial arts. MC ignored him and turned to his father, asking his opinion, and he replied that he would like to see his attempt. However, he should keep in mind that this was his last chance. If he failed, he would no longer belong to their clan. He must be willing to bet at least that much. Baekjun smiled and agreed to these terms, then went to training. He looked at the stump in front of him and, splashing out his mana, thought that he had 1 week. If he could defeat Kangho, he would begin training in martial arts with one of 4 instructors. You could say the reward for this event is learning a new skill for free. He turned his gaze to the mana scarecrow standing next to him. It absorbs a certain amount of its user's mana. Although limited, it is capable of movement and attacking. He smirked and told his brother that he was finished, then began training with the scarecrow. One of the people watching the training asked, is this that weakling Yu Baekjun? Is he training? The guy next to him said that he heard that he ran away in tears when Mr. Yu Kangho tried to train him. He said, oh right, then this time it will be quite an interesting spectacle. I wonder how long he will last. The guy next to him said that it was obvious. The triple fist technique, a martial art that only back alley thugs use. You can learn the 3 basics, jabs, elbows, and uppercuts. At this moment, the protagonist used the Qinggong technique, strike. At this moment, he struck the dummy in the center of the neck, a strike with a mana fist or a weapon. At this moment, Han Songo was watching him, silently watching what was happening. 3 days had passed since the beginning of the training. The protagonist struck the dummies again and again, his brows furrowed, breathing heavily, and the teacher continued to watch him. She thought, there's nothing special about the young master's training. He just runs around using Qinggong techniques and hits dolls with the triple fist technique. What did he do to have the energy to run around using Qinggong techniques all day? No matter how much he trains, his posture never sags. He's surprisingly skilled. And why fist techniques? Then she looked ahead thoughtfully. Li Kunmo approached her and asked, what's wrong, master? She replied, nothing. He said, okay. By the way, has she changed her mind about that question? She replied, no. She was grateful, but she hadn't changed her mind. He said, it would be more convenient if she supported young Master Yu Taerang. She bowed and told him him to take care of himself, Senior Master. As evening fell, the protagonist took a deep breath. He looked around, noticing the destroyed dolls and smiling, saying he'd given them all a good beating. He thought he'd been worried about possible changes from the game, but he guessed there were none. The 1,000-year-old snow ginseng had helped him greatly. If it hadn't been for it, he would have already passed out. He was pulled out of his thoughts by Songa, who approached and said, "Young master." He turned to the side and thought, that voice. She extended her hand forward and asked, "Are you sure you're okay?" He thought, "Songa, the Holy Sword Clan's class system is as follows. Head, blood ties, senior master, master, students. Senior master and the teachers support the heirs they like. Naturally, the more support they receive as an heir, the greater their advantage in the competition. However, some teachers prefer to remain neutral, like Songa." Finally, then he reached for her hand and, taking the handkerchief, asked what she meant. She said, "Kongho has been trained by the senior teacher himself for a long time." He asked, "So what?" She was surprised. He wiped the sweat from his face and said that she was asking what the point of fighting was if he was sure to lose. She replied that that was not true. That was not what she meant. He said that he was sure that was exactly what she meant, that he would have asked the same thing in her place. Well, be that as it may, he had not requested a sparring match without a reason. He had some ideas. She asked, was his idea a fist technique? He looked at her and thought, her eyes full of curiosity. But what was she so interested in? Songa was unique. Most members of the Holy Sword Clan show no interest in anything unrelated to the sword, but she was different. She was interested in other aspects of combat and wanted to use everything to become stronger. For example, magic. However, she was simply being cautious due to her position as a teacher, but for the successor to use fist skills. Then she said, "This is the Holy Sword Clan, a place where only swordsmanship is required." MC asked, "Who decided that?" In the past, the god of war used swords, fist techniques, spears, even bows and arrows. He used all forms of combat. So why does the Holy Sword Clan only wield swords? She tried to answer hesitantly, and he told her to listen. "Teacher Songa, he doesn't intend to adhere to this stupid rule. He will study everything that will help him become stronger." She looked at him silently. The protagonist thought, frankly, the reason is that the god of war only retained sword techniques, but no one knows why. The god of war has never appeared in person in the game. Then she said, of course, he can afford to think like that since he is not limited by the clan's training methods. Well, she's not perfect, but if needed, she can help with training. With these words, she smiled. The protagonist thought, this is it. Songa's curiosity. He asked if she knew everyone in the clan despised him. If she took him on as his teacher, she would be treated as one too. She bowed and said that she was already an outcast in that regard, which might seem rude, but since they were both looked down upon, her becoming his mentor wouldn't change anything, didn't he? He looked at her silently and thought that the other teachers would come up with any excuse to refuse if Baekjun asked to train him. But Songa had given her consent, not because she was also looked down upon, but because she didn't care what others thought. Besides, she was talented as a teacher. Then he smiled and said that he would like to become her student. Songa was a huntress with the potential to become a magical swordsman like Yoon Songa. She had excellent control over mana, so it wouldn't be a loss for her to learn circulation techniques. She said, great, then he should stay here. He was surprised. What? She should wait. It was late. He suggested starting tomorrow. Before he could finish, she told him not to talk like a weakling, young master. He thought he had forgotten, and she added, how was he going to defeat Kongho with this attitude? He looked at her in fear and thought Songa became a completely different person when she taught. The next morning, the protagonist stretched his body while the teacher watched his actions. Last night, she said that in the clan, the main technique is the technique of the mind soaring to the sky. Although it takes some time to master, this technique was left by the god of war himself, so there is no technique better than it. MC sat in the lotus position. She placed her hands on his shoulders and added, however, she will teach him a slightly modified form of this. She will inject some mana into his body. Please, he must focus on how she controls it. Then she directed the energy into his shoulders. Then her eyes widened in surprise, and she thought, what? What about the size of his dantian? No wonder he was able to maintain the Qinggong technique for so long. Such a dantian size is unusual for someone just beginning to study mind cultivation techniques. Moreover, during the manipulation of mana, she could sense his vital energy and how balanced his physical state was. It was as if this body had been bestowed upon him by the heavens. Then he said, so that's how she does it. She was surprised, and he added that he would try it now. She replied, yes, she would help him. Then she placed her hands on his shoulders again and thought, achieving complete control over this cultivation technique requires countless hours of training and combat experience. But the young master had stayed away from martial arts his entire life. Innate characteristics, like the size of one's dantian or the potential stored in one's physical form, are completely different from the ability to perform techniques. But she shouldn't judge him. Then she looked ahead in surprise. She thought she'd been mocked every time the other instructors had wanted to serve the heir. She remembered passing two men conversing. One of them had said the sooner he started supporting Taeron. His companion had said exactly that. She thought they were more concerned with accumulating power than deepening their knowledge of martial arts. However, what she saw in the young master, he turned and asked, how did he do, master? Her hand trembled, and she answered, perfect. She thought he'd perfectly reproduced something he'd only seen once. It was an incomprehensible talent. He might even harbor the greatest talent of all his siblings. If this was young Master Baekjun, she remembered his words and thought perhaps the idea wasn't so bad. Then she turned and, walking on, said she never intended to support the heir. She thought, though, he still had a long way to go. Sometime later, the protagonist lay on his bed, his hands behind his head. He looked at the system window and, smiling, said, "It's so easy, he'll never get enough of free skills." Songa's interest is the condition for activating this event. The first is to train skills instead of the sword. The second is to talk about something that interests her. The third is to possess exceptional talent. Once he fulfills all the conditions, she will teach him 2 skills. He thought one of them is the technique of the mind soaring to the skies, a mind cultivation technique developed by the god of war. It involves accumulating mana and activating the physique. The amount of mana accumulation was increased thanks to modifications from Seonga. He thought it might be simple for him, but satisfying the quest conditions, Seonga's interest, was a very tricky task. Even if he fulfilled all the conditions, she would have left if he didn't have talent. However, in this incarnation, he possessed unearthly talent. There's no way she'd pass by such a genius, right? As he thought about this, he chuckled. One day before the sparring match, one of the people watching asked how he wasn't tired yet. His comrade asked, "Is he going to collapse from exhaustion before the match even starts?" At that moment, Songa shouted, "Young master, this is not how you should use the Qinggong technique. Hurry, he must move his legs decisively." He continued running forward, breathing heavily, and she ran after him, saying, "Good job, he needs to focus." The onlookers were amazed. He was really trying hard. He was right, by the way. Had Songa always been such a strict instructor? At that moment, she ran alongside the protagonist and shouted, "Hurry up." As evening fell, the protagonist sat down exhausted, and she said that she thought that was enough for today. He needed to be in top condition by tomorrow. He looked at her and answered correctly. He was grateful for her help. Songa's teacher. He had learned a lot from her. She said that she never thought he would actually get through the training without a single complaint. He replied that it was all thanks to her inspiration. He couldn't have done it alone. He asked her to stay by his side and continue training him. He still has a lot to work on, especially the heaven-soaring mind technique and the Qinggong technique she recently taught him. She replied, "Yeah, right." She thought he had a lot to work on? Not quite. As with the heaven-soaring mind technique, he was able to remember it exactly as she demonstrated on the first try. And yet, the master claimed that someone like him had no talent. At that moment, everyone looked at the entrance in surprise. The protagonist's brother walked forward and called out to him. He frowned and shouted, "Idiot!" Songa, looking at him, asked, "Young Master Kang-ho?" He resolutely walked forward, and the protagonist, addressing the teacher, told her not to interfere. She looked surprised. What was he saying? The next second, Kang-ho punched the protagonist in the face, then grabbed him by the shirt and indignantly asked, "Is he making fun of me?" He replied that he didn't understand what he was talking about. He shouted, "Why didn't he tell his father he was refusing to spar?" He asked in return, "Why should he?" He shouted, "Because there's no way he could beat him. Does he understand how shameful it is to fight someone like him?" The protagonist grabbed his hand and asked, "Brother, why is he so nervous? Is he afraid of losing to him?" He looked surprised. "What?" The MC squeezed his hand tighter and added, "Father approved this fight. Doesn't he understand that this isn't something they can both refuse?" The onlookers looked ahead in surprise, and Kang-ho laughed loudly and, pulling his hand back, said, "He's right. He shouldn't have said that. See you tomorrow, his dear brother." He's sure he already knows, but there's no rule against taking your opponent's life during sparring. He'd better be prepared. The protagonist looked at him silently, and then Kongo's group followed him, saying, "He's so cool, young master." Then the protagonist suggested going back, addressing the teacher, and she agreed. So time passed, and the long-awaited day arrived. After a while, Junghyun began to climb the stairs and, turning slightly, said, "There's so much dust." She asked who requested this duel. Min walked behind her and replied that she didn't know. "Baekjun, I think?" She smiled and asked, "Really?" Then she looked at the arena and thought that Kangho had arrived early. She assumed Baekjun wasn't there yet. Then she looked to the side and thought, "The old men are over there. They all support Taeran. The one she should pay attention to is Jaehyun. She needs to win her over to her side." Then Min said, "Hey, she should look over there." She looked away in surprise, just as the protagonist walked into the square with the teacher behind him. She wondered, Instructor Songa? Why was she next to him? After a while, MC looked up and said he was grateful for the barrier, although he wished it would also block the way. He turned to the teacher and asked, "Does she agree?" She remained silent, and then he asked, "Is something wrong?" She replied that she didn't think he would lose. After all, she had seen his training. He replied that Sungmin was worried too. She added, "But young Master Kangho is too cruel. She's worried that even if he wins, he'll come out of this fight crippled." He looked at her silently, then noticed that she was speaking as if she were his official teacher. She shouted, "Well, the leader is coming." He looked ahead and said that they better get ready. "Teacher Songa, does she want to know something interesting?" She was surprised. "What?" He said his older brother liked to go to all sorts of places since childhood. She said she'd heard about it. He added that he once encountered a monster that horribly injured his right arm. They said it was barely healed. Then she handed him a towel and asked, "Is that so?" He confirmed it. In any case, he was mentioning it now for a reason. With these words, he looked at the system window that appeared, which said, "The task is that he has become a disgrace to his family. He must teach a lesson to Kangho, who bullied him from a young age. Life is a different matter entirely. He must defeat him in sparring to fulfill the conditions. The reward is 300 points of knowledge in the Book of the God of War." He smiled and told her not to worry too much. At that moment, the clan leader sat down in his chair and looked at his subordinate, who nodded and, loudly stamping his foot, shouted, "It's time for sparring. Are both participants ready?" The protagonist adjusted his gloves, and his brother, holding his weapon in his hand, looked at him. The protagonist thought, "It seems he's in good condition." Then Minjin shouted that he'll take that as an affirmative answer. At that moment, Kangho, enraged, bit his lip and thought, He'll kill him. He's finished. He would kill him for any purpose at any cost. Then Minjin shouted, the sparring begins. The next second, Kangho kicked off the ground and charged. He thought, the sword soaring to the sky technique, the 9 dragon's fangs. That's what he'd like to use, but he's not ready yet. The 5 dragon's fangs. But that should be enough. He'll see if he can dodge it even though he hasn't studied martial arts. The next second, the protagonist stood up, and he was surprised. The protagonist looked at him. Not long before, he was sitting at his computer. He shouted indignantly, damn it, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. In the distant past, when he was putting all his effort into beating the game as Baekjun, he tilted his head back and asked what he needed to do to defeat Kangho. He was stuck on the fight against Kangho. He said that he couldn't even ask anyone because no one would play as Baekjun. There must be a way, something like cutting one way, then another, right? Suddenly, an idea occurred to him. He looked at the monitor screen and said, albeit a little meanly, but it might work. The fun factor of the game, combining skills. Not long before, Sungmin said that he needed to rest today, young master. The protagonist replied, yes, she was going to. Sungmin peeked out from behind the door and said, okay, then he'll go to bed too. The protagonist wished him good night, and then a system window appeared in front of him, and he thought, now how can he combine all his skills to defeat his brother? He looked at the available skills. In the present, he used Earth Slam, which kicked up dust and rocks toward his enemies. Kangho screamed. He'd been wondering what he was going to do, but it was a terrible technique. No. Before he could finish speaking, one of the rocks grazed his face. He looked ahead in surprise and added a demonstration of attributes. Rocks covered in ice flew forward, and Kangho, trying to cover himself with his hands, screamed, what the hell? It was leaving wounds on his body, and he screamed, idiot! He's using dirty tricks. And then the protagonist added a powerful punch to the face and thought, strike. His brother was thrown to the side, and then he grabbed his arm and swung again. Those present watched in amazement. The next second, the protagonist began to twist his brother's arm. Dust flew in all directions, and then Kangho charged, while MC used a Qinggong technique, a swift step that consumes a lot of mana to instantly leap a certain distance. His brother fell to the ground, and he said, what a shame, brother. He said he'd kill him, but at this rate, he wouldn't leave a scratch on him. He yelled indignantly at him to shut up. The protagonist added, brother, does he know why father let him get away with his stupid antics? Because he's talented, enough to humiliate others. But frankly, he doesn't quite understand father. Does he seriously think he's talented? At that moment he chuckled, and his brother yelled at him to shut up, you idiot. Then he used Moonslash. The attack flew straight at the protagonist, but he swung his fist. Kangho thought, idiot. Is he trying to block a skill with his bare hands? His arrogance will be his undoing. His hands will be it. The next second, the protagonist used attribute demonstration, directing it forward, dissolving his opponent's attack. His brother looked at him in confusion and shouted, amplified energy? How is he? The protagonist said that only the strong survive in the Holy Sword clan. He kicked off the ground and leaping upward, swung his fist again, and added that the strong prey on the weak, and the weak are devoured by the strong. He used skill demonstration plus strike. Then he delivered a powerful attack, scattering debris in all directions. Smoke scattered again, and Songa shielded herself with her hand, thinking she couldn't see anything because of the dust. Then she called out to the young master. At that moment, the protagonist looked at the system window that appeared, which said that he had completed the quest. He had become a disgrace to his family. As a reward, he received 300 points. His knowledge of the Book of the God of War had increased. Then he smiled and said that since he was now stronger, he would have his power, his mansion, his finances, absolutely everything. This is the reward that goes to the winner. Then Jaeyeon said in surprise, wow, he completely mastered enhanced energy and attributes in a week without any guidance. John Daekwon looked at her and said that wasn't true. He'd heard that Songa had helped him, but he'd been told she'd only taught him circulation and Qinggong techniques. Cheon Jungwon said, so no one taught him fist techniques or enhanced energy. Kunmo looked at him and said he couldn't believe it. He'd managed to reach such a level on his own. At that moment, Jungyeon thought, a genius? No, even a genius couldn't do that. He never had any talent in the first place. His father had been trying to train him since he was a child. Could it be that his father was wrong? Then the clan leader told him to tell Baekjun to come to his room. At that moment, the protagonist, sighing loudly, walked up to Songa and said that it could have ended badly. He'd used up all his mana. She said, good job. She thought he might get hurt, but he won and remained completely unharmed. This is amazing. He put on his shirt and said that he had asked her not to worry. Then he looked at her and thought that if he officially asked her to support him, she might even agree. If this were a game, he would be tempting fate. Then she said, here are his clothes. He took it and thanked her. He thought that soon she would become his official instructor. They should hurry. At that moment, a worker approached him and bowing said, young Master Baekjun, the head of the family wanted to see him there. He thought that he supposed he was going to ask which instructor he wanted to train with. Then he said that he would come to him immediately after changing his clothes. She said, okay. He thought that this was not all he wanted. Jungwon would treat Kangho, since he had been beaten by the youngest in the family, who had only been training for a week. His reputation in the clan will be ruined, and he will be able to take more from them. He will do the same as then. Sometime later, Muhak's room. The head of the family looked seriously at his son while the protagonist was kneeling, and he said he expressed his desire to study martial arts. He answered, yes, father. He added, the senior teachers are the pillars of their clan. Only those endowed with talent have the right to study with them. Does he have talent? The protagonist looked up and asked, does he not? At that moment, the maid cried out, young master. Muhak said, he definitely has the spirit of a warrior. However, they cannot all teach him at the same time. If the senior teacher refuses to train him, then he must accept it. The pillars of the clan, they should not be under the control of blood relatives. The protagonist said, that is, he is telling him to choose only one. He thought he knew it. Well, Daekwon, Kunmo, Jaeon, Jongwon, only 3 of them are already supporting the heir. Even if he asked them, they would refuse or teach him useless things. He had only one option to activate the event. He then said that in this case he would choose Senior Master Jaeon. Jaeon was the most experienced of the 4 senior combat instructors. She had served Muhak for a very long time. To develop the clan's swordsmanship, she conducts research into many forms of martial arts. Rather than participate in the succession struggle for power, she prefers to invest all her efforts in perfecting the clan's swordsmanship and cultivating young talents. Among her students, some even became combat instructors themselves, such as Songa. Evaluating her influence based on criteria such as nurturing talent, developing swordsmanship, and overall contribution to the clan, the instructor with the greatest influence in this regard would undoubtedly be Jaeon. After a few seconds, Muhak asked, "What will she say?" She remained silent, and then Jongwon thought, this is the end. While mastering aura in such a short time is commendable, Jaeon doesn't take heirs as apprentices, and even to young Master Taerong, she only taught the basics of swordsmanship. Well, he supposes Baekjun couldn't have known this, since he'd been a recluse his entire life. If only senior instructor Jaeon, like instructor Songa, weren't so uncompromising about maintaining neutrality. At that moment she said, before that, she'd like to confirm something. She approached the protagonist and said, "Young master, she begs your pardon." He replied, "Yes." Then she came up behind him and, placing her hand on his shoulder, began releasing energy. MC thought she was testing him for talent. Although the results were obvious, the next second, her eyes widened in surprise and she said, "Impossible." "Perfect." Kunmo asked, "Senior instructor Jaeon, what is perfect?" She replied that she meant exactly what she said. His physique was perfect. He asked, was even the senior instructor forced to say that? Then the clan leader spoke up. So what would she do? She replied that until now, when the heirs had asked her for mentorship, she had declined their requests, not wanting to interfere with the succession conflict. He said that he was aware of her every decision and respected it. Then she added, however, she thought that now she would have to go against her principles. She would accept him as a student. He was surprised, really? Well, she should do as she pleased. Now that the instructor had been chosen, everyone except Jaeon could go. At that moment, the protagonist said that before that, he would like to make one more request. Muhak asked, "A request?" He confirmed it. Yes, he was asking for access to the clan treasury. The others looked at him in surprise, and Jaeon wondered, really? The protagonist thought about Taerang, Jungyeon, Kangho, even Min. They spent the clan's money freely, but he was like some kind of handicapped child. All his life, he could only take as much as he could barely survive. In other words, if Muhak allowed him to freely spend the clan's finances, it would mean his acceptance as a member of the family. Baekjun had been content living without much money, but now everything had changed. There were too many things he wanted to spend money on. Therefore, he needed his confirmation here and now, for the sake of his future. Then Muhak said, well, all of Kangho's money must be given to Baekjun. At that moment, the maid objected. "Master," he said, "until Kangho learns his lesson, they must allow him to use the clan's money." She cried out, "Master, this is too cruel." He looked at her, and she said in fear, "No," she wanted to say. He asked, "Does she think this is too cruel? If that's the case, then she should let him ask her something. Hadn't Kangho become idle and neglect his training?" She said so. He said he certainly had talent. That was why he let him do whatever he pleased, but he asked her not to forget who had won today's duel. Were there any areas in which he excelled more than Baekjun? This was the Holy Sword clan, and it had become weak. There was no place for weaklings here. If they understood this, they could go. As evening fell, Jaeon took a sip of her drink. The clan leader asked how he was. She said she assumed he was asking about the younger master, but she couldn't answer. She looked at the cup of drink in her hands, and added that over the years she had trained countless talented young men and women, but none of them possessed talent comparable to that of the young master. She thought perhaps he could even match the headmaster. Then he said, it was strange. He had observed him for many years, but had never detected a glimmer of talent in him, and he believed so. Until now. Jaeon said that he had recently lost consciousness for several days after a monster attack. He asked if she was implying that something might have happened to him at that time. She replied that it was possible. He smiled and said it was interesting. He thought he could become another variable in the succession conflict. Baekjun had only 2 days to recover from the sparring match before beginning his training under Jaeon. The protagonist looked at the system window, which said, Book of the God of War, a book left behind by a warrior bodhisattva after his death to archive the world's martial arts. It contains all existing martial arts, with each new technique automatically added due to mystical powers. Points can be earned by completing quests awarded for certain user actions. The user can spend points to learn skills from the book. The user can spend points to obtain new traits. The protagonist thought, great, he could only learn skills when the War God's book was rank 1, but now that it has advanced to rank 2, he can even obtain new traits. Traits are a person's actual talent. For example, developing immunity to poison or increasing mana recovery speed. There are many useful traits. In addition, some events can only begin when he uses traits. At that moment, he slammed the book shut and thought, that he had about a month and a half before Terang returned. Once he returned, he would undoubtedly become his target. For this reason, he needed to become as strong as possible before his arrival. Then he looked to the side and said that he believed it was time to adapt to the realities of this world. Before his official debut in society, he decided to first find out some information from Sungmin. Shortly before, he asked in surprise. He wants him to find out what items will be up for auction next week at the Somnium Bar. The protagonist replied, "Yeah, exactly." Heroes Road is a game where the story and the environment change after each turn. Even if you follow the same path, things like the enemy base can change. This means that if he, the player character, tries to do something, it will cause an even greater butterfly effect. So it's much safer to ask Sungmin to do his bidding. He doesn't have free time due to studying with Jaeyeon and the need to manage his finances. The protagonist, looking ahead, said, "Damn, to be expected from Kangho." He looked at the huge pile of gold coins and expensive items in front of him and said that he has a lot of savings. At that moment, Songa approached him and said, "Young master, this is his card." He looked at the card and thought, a black card, used by only 0.1% of people. The Holy Sword clan may live on Mount Seoraksan, far from civilization, but their wealth is no small matter, considering they sold everything they got from the gate though. Then she smiled and said that he asked Sungmin for it. He reached for the card in her hands and asked if she would personally give it to him. She replied, "That's right, that's right. From now on, she is his official teacher." He thought this meant that she would teach him and him alone. It was only a title, teacher, but the duties were more like a secretary's. Songa was one of the most talented teachers, exactly what he needed, and such a person volunteered to be his teacher. He said he was honored to be her student. He thought, hell yes. After some time he was studying the book, turning the next page. He thought he'll have to focus on training for a while, so it's worth learning a trade or two. He said, it should be somewhere here. Right here. A system window appeared in front of him saying, C-rank stimulant. His body can withstand prolonged exertion and quickly recovers strength. He said, a C-rank trait for 300 points. He thought it was significantly more expensive than skills, but since he no longer had the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng buff, he'd find it useful. He was able to train day and night thanks to this ginseng, but he can't rely on such miracle drugs forever. He said, it'll do for his trait. Now for the skill. There are two ways to obtain skills in Heroes Road. The first is through training. The second is from a skill book. A skill book stores all the information he needs. Just reading it grants the skill. The problem is that skill books are incredibly rare. Of course, low-rank books are easy to find, but he needs high-rank skills. Finding it is quite a task. He thought this is why training is a more popular method. Skill books are more about luck. Well, since he has the Book of the God of War, he can use this method at any time. Plus, being able to get the training he wants as the heir of the Holy Sword clan is incredibly useful for him now. At this moment, he approached the training ground. Jaeyeon, noticing him, said, he is here, young master. He should go in. Then they walked into the building. She sat down at the table and said that she did not know if he liked tea. The protagonist reached for the glass and said that he did not dislike it. Then she added that he said that he wanted to learn martial arts from her, right? She pulled the mug closer to herself and asked what exactly he wanted to learn. He answered, hand-to-hand combat techniques. That is what he wants to master. She looked at him in surprise and asked, hand-to-hand combat techniques? He confirmed this. He thought that it was common for clan heirs to want to learn sword techniques, the symbol of the Holy Sword's martial arts, and also what all disciples and blood relatives studied. The heaven-soaring sword technique was powerful on its own, but became even more powerful with increased mastery. She asked, he understood that this was the Holy Sword clan, right? He replied, of course. She looked at him in surprise. He then added that he wasn't saying he intended to completely abandon the sword. Fist techniques were just the beginning. He wished to learn all forms of martial arts, just as the God of War had learned them. He intended to learn and use everything that would help him become stronger. She looked at him silently and then he added, regarding that, he had heard that she had researched the martial arts used by the God of War. He figured that might be useful. She closed her eyes and said, interesting. It was as if he was certain she knew that. He thought, of course, that's why he chose her. Then she said, okay. As he said, she's familiar with the fist technique. She learned it while traveling the world in search of all kinds of scrolls. However, there's one problem. She was able to find a record of the technique, but it's only a fragment. He said, that means, she confirmed, it's not perfect. She'll be honest with him. If he wants to become stronger, he must learn the heaven-soaring sword technique. This technique contains the fangs of the 9 dragons and before she could finish speaking, the protagonist put his cup down on the table and said, no, he won't change his mind. He asks her to teach him the fist technique. She sighed and noticed that he was determined. Fine, if that's what he wants. After a while, they returned to the training grounds. The protagonist looked around and thought, damn, she's good. There's plenty of talent here. She said she'll teach him 2 moves. He said, 2, which is practically nothing for a fist technique. She answered, that's right. As she stated, it's imperfect. More than half is lost. Then she sent energy into a special device in front of her, and several puppets appeared before them. Several students noticed this and were surprised. One of them asked, mana dummies? She was going to show them something. Another student remarked that this rarely happened. Was young Master Baekjun next to her? Then a system window appeared in front of the protagonist, and it said, of course, he was a genius. The clan knew of his victory over Kongho, but they still doubted doubted his skills. He must prove his talent to them. He must carefully observe Jaeyeon's skill and repeat it. He could do it. He was a genius after all. The reward was 200 points. He smiled and thought, easy as pie. Then the teacher came forward and said that she would now show him the first move. It was called Heaven Destroyer. She then assumed a stance and began concentrating her energy, streams of her energy scattering near the mannequins. She then began to swirl the streams of energy around herself, then concentrated it in her fist and abruptly rushed forward, striking one of the mannequins with her fist. A magical spirit appeared behind her and then vanished into thin air, causing a small explosion and smoke rising into the sky. MC said, Heaven Destroyer. The teacher said, as the name suggests, the move is extremely destructive. She dusted off her hands and added that for this reason, it consumes an incredible amount of mana. A person with a normal-sized dantian shouldn't even try it. The protagonist replied that he understood, and then she added that she would now demonstrate a second move. But before the demonstration, she stopped near one of the mannequins and placed her hand on it. She said it could provoke the mana dummies to attack. More precisely, he should make them shoot spheres of mana. That's it. With these words, she began to release mana into the dummy and said, if you just input mana into it. The next second, a ball of energy burst out of the dummy and headed straight for the protagonist. Jaeyeon said that the attack will not be strong enough to hurt him, but it burns a little. The protagonist silently looked at the hand that stopped the attack and thought, why did it shoot straight at him? He did not remember such a thing in the game script. Then she appeared next to him and said that she was raising this issue for the sake of demonstrating the second move. She turned slightly and added, she asks him to watch closely. The next second, all the dummies simultaneously aimed their attacks straight at her. She began to concentrate the energy around herself, wrapping it in a vortex, then concentrated it in her hand. Creating a powerful ball of energy, she sent it forward. The cloud of energy broke into several pieces, simultaneously hitting all the dummies. The students were surprised. Wow, senior instructor Jaeyeon even knows martial arts of this kind? He wouldn't dare even try to imitate her. Then she said, a graceful parry of an attack. The move is called a reverse strike. It doesn't seem as powerful as Heaven's Destroyer, but the execution is much more difficult. The protagonist said that only people with good mana control can master it. He thought it was a very useful skill. It could come in handy in many situations. Then the teacher approached him and said, yes, she hasn't had the chance to use it in combat yet, but she believes it could be useful in battles against mages. The protagonist said, I see. Now he will try. She was surprised. At this moment, the students watched what was happening. One of them said, I wonder what they are talking about. His comrade asked, by the way, why is young Master Baekjun next to her? He just can't understand. Another student pointed forward and said that he heard that he asked senior instructor Jaeyeon to teach him martial arts. The boy asked, surprised, what? Another student said that apparently the clan leader had given the go-ahead after his victory over Kangho in combat. The boy said, that can't be right. Who would believe such nonsense? He wouldn't believe it until he saw it with his own eyes. Wait, they have to wait. The senior instructor is doing something. At that moment, she placed her hand on the dummy and asked, will he start with the second move? MC replied, yes, with that first. She looked at him and wondered what he was thinking. He claimed he could perform the move after seeing it only once. And what's more, she glanced away and thought, the students who weren't present at his sparring with young Master Kangho weren't even trying to hide the fact that they looked down on the young master. If he failed now, they'd make fun of him even more. Then he said he was ready. He wondered what he had to do to learn the martial art. The first step is to train or use a skill book. It's either one or the other. Next, you must undergo training, either with an expert or alone. Whichever method you choose, arduous training is inevitable. It's the only way to master a skill, but he's different. At that moment, the dummies concentrated their energy and sent clots of mana forward. He thought it was because he possessed the God of War's book. At that moment, the protagonist concentrated energy in his hand. Everyone present looked at him in bewilderment. He waved his hand, parrying the attack. Streams of mana concentrated even on his legs, scattering in all directions. Jaeyeon thought, impossible. He neutralized the attack with a reverse strike. At that moment, the protagonist swung the fist in which he concentrated his energy and sharply directed the energy forward, releasing the image of a magical creature. Then there was a small explosion. The burning mannequin head fell to the ground. The students looked on in bewilderment, and Jaeyeon thought, is this even possible? She was also called a genius, but it took her a very long time to learn this technique, and he not only repeated it, but even improved it. At that moment, a system window appeared in front of the protagonist, which said he completed the task. Of course, he is a genius. As a reward, he received 200 points. Then the teacher approached him and remarked that he was amazing. She didn't even think that he used the absorbed mana for the Heaven Breaker. He looked at her and said that she was overpraising him. Compared to her, his mana is too little, so he decided that since he is not as skilled as her, he should take the mana he lacks from an external source. He looked away and smiling said, well, he supposes even this is not very good. His Heaven Breaker is loud, but not very effective. She remained silent, then said, young master, this thought occurred to her the very first time they met. He is very talented. He looked at her and thanked her. Then she added, over the years she had taught many, but none could compare to him, and she likely wouldn't meet anyone as talented in the future. Frankly, she wasn't sure she could teach him much. She didn't have the courage to be his teacher. He looked at her in surprise and thought, this is only natural. The quest, of course. He, a genius, has a hidden function, Depending on how he completes the quest, the reward associated with it changes. The reward that appears afterward, successor of the god of war. The protagonist looked at the system window and thought, considering what she had just said. The system window said, successor of the god of war, an impressive display of skill. He is undoubtedly the successor of the god of war. He must practice the skill that senior combat instructor Jaeon is teaching him. He took another step towards becoming a god of war, and he must follow the instructions of senior combat instructor Jaeon. The skill is Ghost Steps. He thought, Ghost Steps? A skill that is often used. He was going to buy it anyway, but receiving something as a reward is even better. Although this quest has one critical catch, she said that she still wants to teach him. Perhaps he has heard of Ghost Steps? It is a skill that will buy him the time he needs to use Heavenbreaker. He was surprised and answered, right? He thought that. She looked at him and suggested that he try it. She thinks it will be easier to understand this way. He thought the difficulty of training is catastrophic. A week passed. As expected, Baekjun was working hard. He lay on the floor, breathing heavily, and said that he can't do this anymore. Jaeon approached him and said that he was doing well, young master. He looked at her and asked, huh? She said he'd made a lot of progress in just 1 week. He laughed slightly and said that wasn't true at all. He wasn't even close to her level. At that moment, Jinwon approached them and said, wow, he's already thinking about catching up with the senior combat instructor? He thought that was a bit arrogant. Jaeon looked at him and thought, pharmacist Jinwon and Songa? She said they hadn't seen each other in a while. Pharmacist. He came closer and added, indeed, a long time, senior instructor. Jaeon added that she hadn't seen her, Songa, in a long time. In response, she nodded and greeted her. She asked, by the way, what brought them here? The protagonist looked ahead in surprise and said, she doesn't know yet. Teacher Songa is his personal teacher. She said, I see, but she said that when she becomes an instructor, she will remain neutral. The protagonist smiled and asked, is that true? She confirmed it. Then Songa blushed with embarrassment and said, I've changed my mind. She shouldn't make fun of her for this. Jaeon laughed lightly and apologized, saying she'd been too rude. She just wanted to tease her. She replied that she was just saying it just in case. But she hadn't changed her mind rashly. She said she knew, she was sure, she thought it through, and she always believed in her. Well, that concludes her promised training. The protagonist replied, yes, fine. Then she added that there was now just over a month left until young master Tairang's return. Didn't he also wish to claim the position of clan head? He replied that it was too late to turn back. None of the elder brothers would leave him alone once he'd shown his teeth. She said that he also had the option of joining a faction, like young master Kangho. He smiled and, looking at her, asked, does she think he'll do that? She replied that she believed she had worried unnecessarily. If young master Yu Jongmin and young miss Yu Lian were still alive, things would be much more difficult. He said, I understand. She added that young miss Jungyun was especially attached to young master Jongmin. She remembered how sad she was after his death. Young master, the other heirs, won't leave him alone now. He must be wary of young master Taerang and young miss Jungyeon. She looked at him and added that they both deeply desire the position of clan head. They will do everything possible to achieve this. The protagonist rose to his feet and replied that yes, he was well aware of this. He thought he knew this far better than anyone. Then she said that he showed good results during training. It was an honor for her to teach him. In response, he thanked her. Sometime later, he walked down the corridor and thought, Jongmin and Lian are already dead. They say their deaths were an accident, but is that really true? It is not. These two made it clear to everyone that they have ambitions to compete for the position of clan head. Taeran killed them both and hushed up the tragedy. He tried to kill Baekjun, despite the fact that he was no competition. He is confident that she showed her intentions. He has become #1 on his list. He needs to become much stronger. The next second, he stopped in surprise and looked ahead. Sungmin turned to him and asked, he's back, young master? He and Songa looked at him in confusion. Then the MC came closer and, sighing, said that he had scared him. He thought he had forgotten that there were branches where something like this happened. And it happened precisely when he was thinking about Taerang. He almost didn't recognize him. Then Songa said, he has enough courage. How dare he infiltrate the Holy Sword Clan? With these words, she reached for her weapon, and the protagonist looked at her. She said that she didn't know where he came from, but this room would become his grave. The protagonist extended his hand to her and said, no, Master Songa, she should take a closer look. It's Sungmin. She turned and asked, what? Then she looked back at him and said, as if she weren't looking at this pig. She looked at his face again and thought in surprise, what? After a while, they all sat down at the table. Songa, looking at the dessert in her hands, said, unbelievable, how can there be such depth in taste? She leaned towards the protagonist and said that now she understood how Sungmin managed to gain so much weight in just a week. Sungmin asked, really? He thought he was more surprised that she had never tried macarons. She replied, well, she grew up in a clan. The protagonist popped the dessert into his mouth and thought that it made sense. If he remembered correctly, Songa was an orphan. She had lived in the clan since she was a child. Then Sungmin said, young master, he had researched the auction that would be held at the Somnium Bar. Apparently, the carcass of a rare beast would be on display there. He had also brought invitations for it. With these words, he handed him the invitations and added that he had taken 2 just in case. But would they both be needed? He replied, of course. Smiling, he looked at him and said that he had worked hard to get 2 invitations. It would be a shame to miss out. Now they should take a look. The auction is starting. A few moments later, the Holy Sword Clan's Seoul branch. Junwoo was sitting in his office and answering the phone said, yes, that's right. What? The younger master is coming to Seoul? Understood. he will speed up the preparations right away. Meanwhile, the protagonist and Songa were walking down the street. She asked, "Young master?" People were staring at her. He replied that it would be strange if they weren't, considering the outfit she had chosen to wear. She asked him not to let his guard down. Someone might. Before she could finish speaking, he told her not to overreact. She seemed even more suspicious looking around. She looked at him and said, "But it's not that simple." He sighed, then asked, "By the way, doesn't she come to Seoul often?" She answered, "Yes, there's no reason for her to." He asked when she was last here. She answered that she thought when she first became an instructor, she came to re-register with the Hunters Association. They stopped at a traffic light, and he asked to update her information after becoming an instructor. She answered, "Exactly." Then he asked, "The Hunters Association?" He looked at a building nearby and asked, "Is this their building?" She looked in the same direction and answered, "Yes, it's a nominal organization. Hundreds of years ago, monsters and gates began to appear. Certain individuals, known as hunters, formed groups and fought off the monsters together. The groups that have survived to this day have evolved into guilds and mage towers, or clans like the Holy Sword Clan. They are driven primarily by profit. These aren't just any hunter organizations, but dark sects with more influence than the government itself." Songa then looked at the protagonist and said, "Ordinary hunters might worry about things like that, but he doesn't need to, young master." He said he was sure that was the case. She looked at him in surprise. He thought, well, at least for now. Who knows what might change after joining Han Chanwoo's hunter organization. After a while, he handed the employee an invitation, and they walked forward, then entered the elevator and arrived at the desired floor. They walked into a spacious room filled with many people. The protagonist walked forward and said, "It looks like they've arrived on time." Songa, looking around in surprise, said, "Wow. She would never have thought something like this existed underground." He asked, "Is it quite spacious here? Does she agree?" She replied, "Yes, there is also a lot of food here, as well as hunters." "Does he think they're all gathered here for the auctions?" He replied, "It seems so." She asked, "But what kind of auction is this?" He replied that she would understand when she saw it. He suggested they go up to the second floor for a better view. The next second, the host picked up the microphone and said that he thanked them for waiting. "Ladies and gentlemen, he welcomed them to the Somnium auction. Here they sell rare items not only from this world, but from others as well. What they would show them today can only be obtained from special monsters from the said worlds." They would begin the auction, an A-rank item brought from the dark region. Some of them might have already guessed what this was about. Then he threw the cape off the item and, pointing his hand at the item, shouted, "A skill book. Not just an ordinary book, but a magical skill book. It was obtained from another world, from the Lebron Kingdom on the continent of Fantasia." The protagonist asked, "A skill book? It looks quite good." The host said they were starting at 100 million won. They have 120 million. At this point, Songa looked at the item with admiration, and the MC thought, no wonder, since she has a talent for magic, the book should have attracted her interest. The host shouted, 140 million. The protagonist thought there must be an A-rank magical property in it. He can't remember its name. He should really hurry up and find this artifact. It's annoying. In any case, he thinks it's almost time. Then the host shouted, "Yes, 200 million, 220 million. They have 220 million, 240 million. Then Javan raised his number and said, "A billion." The protagonist smiled and said, "They'll begin." After a while, the host announced, "Now they have one last item left." He will thank everyone for waiting so long. The main lot of their auction today, hailing from Mount Siraksan, home to all existing species of rare monsters, and the rarest mystical creature among them, the body of a snow tiger. With these words, he threw the cloak off the enormous creature. Songa, looking at it in bewilderment, said, "It can't be, such a colossal amount of mana." The host said, "It's so fresh it looks almost alive. Do they agree?" Immediately after death, this carcass was processed with special care, and thanks to this, the heart, the source of this mana, is still intact. The audience began shouting, "How much is it?" He should just say the price already. He said, "Well, he'll announce the starting price. The price for a snow tiger starts at 1 billion. They'll start at 1 billion won." Shouts echoed through the hall. 1.5 billion, 1.95 billion, 2 billion, Songa said. "Everyone's haggling like crazy." The protagonist replied, "Of course, it's a snow tiger after all." He then looked at the creature again and thought, "This one's skin, teeth, heart, everything is very valuable and will bring many benefits." He believes it's worth making a bet too. The crowd continued to shout, 2.2 billion, 2.5 billion. At that moment, the protagonist raised his number and said, 6 billion. Everyone present looked at him in surprise, and Songa shouted, "Young master, even if he can spend the clan's money freely, 6 billion is too much. If the leader finds out, he'll be furious." The protagonist looked at her and then told her not to worry about it. "It's not that much. His father won't say anything against it." Then the host said, "They have 6 billion. The MC added, "Besides, it's practically nothing for the clan." She noticed that he was right, but the crowd continued to shout, 6.2 billion, 6.35 billion, 6.45 billion. The protagonist thought that he expected nothing less from the carcass of a snow tiger. It's not enough to force everyone to surrender. Then Songa spoke up, but since he recently received permission to manage the clan's money, she thinks it might be a good idea to handle it more carefully. The MC said 10 billion. Songa looked at him puzzled. The host shouted, "Wow, 10 billion. The price suddenly jumped to 10 billion. The increase is happening so fast. They have 10 billion. Will they be able to exceed this bar? At this moment, Javan, sweating, thought, damn, first 6 billion, now 10? He can still bet higher, but he's betting with a much larger difference. And what's more, he looks like a spoiled child of rich people. Who the hell is he? That rich? No, it doesn't matter. He has to get the snow tiger carcass. Then he raised his number and shouted 10.2 billion. The protagonist said, so stubborn. Then he raised his number and said 15 billion. Songa looked at him, and Javan, also turning his gaze to him, thought, 15 billion? He was about to name a higher price, but the MC said 20 billion. Javan slammed his fist on the arm of his chair and thought, damn, he's half-heartedly shouting out 20 billion? He's insanely rich. The host shouted, 20 billion? They have 20 billion. Javan thought, but he really needs this. The host shouted, if there are no more bids, then an auction can be finished. He thought, since it has come to this. The host said, 4, 3, 2, and 20 billion. Sold. Unfortunately, they have no more lots left for them, but they have prepared many other entertainments for them. Sometime later, the protagonist and his teacher were walking down the street. Songa, holding the item in her hand, said, it's quite convenient. The body of a snow tiger fits into this small pouch. The protagonist stepped forward and said, by the way, this magic item is for her. Teacher Songa, does she know what stragglers means? She asked. What? He asked. She knows what a magic tower is, right? She replied, yes, of course. He said, exactly. It's the strongest association of mages in the entire world, on par with the Holy Sword Clan. Gaining recognition in the magic tower is very difficult. The requirements are off the charts, and in terms of the intensity of training, it can rival that of the Holy Sword Clan. That's why many didn't pass the selection. They created their own organization, which they called Stragglers. She said, I understand. Then he stood up and added, these are former students from the Magic Tower, the only place where magic is taught. People call them a mercenary organization, but he disagrees. It would be more accurate to call them a criminal organization. They go crazy when they see an object that's even remotely related, an example she saw before her. At that moment, Javan and a group of people stood before them, and he asked, dare he suggest this is the body of a snow tiger? He ordered them to give it to him. The guy looked at MC and said, he looks like a kid from a rich family. Will they get into trouble for this? The man replied, well, they'll finish this quickly and leave. He doesn't seem particularly strong. The richer, the better for them. The guy asked, did he cast a silent spell? The man replied, of course. He doesn't want to get into trouble. Songa asked, do they realize who they're talking to? Javan replied, yeah, rich kid. What are they standing there for? He ordered the others to grab them. The guys put their hands forward and activated magic seals. It was heading towards MC and Songa, when suddenly Baekjun activated his mana and created a barrier. It protected them from attacks, and the guy asked, puzzled, what? Their attacks aren't getting through. He put the seal in front of him and screamed, horror! A bright stream of energy headed towards MC, who quickly dodged, and an explosion occurred. The man asked, confused, where did it disappear to? Baekjun used ghostly steps and approached him. This is covering distance in an instant, leaving behind a ghostly double. MC clenched his fist and fired at this mana. He hit the guy, causing him to fly into the air. The ground was covered with ice blocks and the other men began to scream loudly. Damn it, his feet were frozen. Who the hell is he? Javan. He told them they had nothing to worry about. Javan's eyes widened in confusion and thought something was wrong. He had never seen such a skill. If they had no chance of winning, he shouldn't be here. Javan turned around and said fearfully, he'll call for backup from the base. Let them hold out a little longer. The guy asked irritably, what? Is he completely crazy? He can call them from here. Javan ran away and the guy shouted after him, he's a crazy idiot. MC looked at this and turned around and said, teacher Han Songa, he thinks he's one of the main ones. Maybe he should leave them to her? Songa nodded and answered, of course. MC disappeared and Songa thought, seriously, he only recently learned this skill. However, he already uses it professionally. She knew he was a genius. But why hadn't anyone realized this until now? Songa grabbed her sword and thought, she's never heard of the Stragglers organization. He even has such knowledge of the world. The guy put his hand forward and created a seal and said, only their legs are frozen. If they don't want to die, let them do something. A stream of fire headed towards Songa, but she cut it with her sword. Everyone's eyes widened in confusion and asked, did she cut through it? The guy's eyes widened and asked to wait. That sword technique. Let them just don't tell him. The Holy Sword Clan. Songa neutralized the guy before he could finish speaking. She said, there are people in this world they should never mess with. All the blame lies with them and their stupidity for attacking the Holy Sword Clan. At that moment, Javan was running down the street and looking around, breathing heavily. MC appeared behind him, clutching the book and thinking, so they are here. The location of their base changes in every chapter, so this is the only way for him to find them. They don't just have 1 or 2 bases. He wishes they had only one location, like their headquarters overseas. Well, he supposes it doesn't matter. Baekjun ordered them to show themselves, when suddenly fighters appeared next to him. He thought, since they appear at this moment. Lee Junwoo, the branch manager of the Holy Sword Clan, asked, did he call him young master? MC replied, yes. Did he see who entered this building? Are there civilians inside? Junwoo answered, as far as he could tell, no. Baekjun asked, is that so? Then, except for the man they saw, let them kill everyone. The boys answered, yes, young master. He turned around and thought, they're acting as if he'd called them, despite the fact that they'd been by his side the entire time he was in Seoul. He was sure of this, because when he was alone, with only Han Seonga, the clan's leadership called their branch and ordered them to accompany him. Exactly. That's the advantage of completing the Yu Baekjun path. Despite the extreme difficulty, absolute power. MC thought happily. He liked it. The quest window announced pest control. Criminals had set their sights on the item he'd purchased at the auction. He needed to find their base and completely exterminate them. Reward: 2,000 points. After a while, Javen asked fearfully, who were they and why did they attack them? Junwoo looked at him and remained silent, and MC asked, he's asking who? They are the Holy Sword Clan. Javen laughed out loud and asked, is this some kind of joke? The Holy Sword Clan? And what are representatives of the greatest clan doing in a place like this? They should be sitting on their Seoraksan mountain. Before he could finish speaking, he was struck. His tooth flew out and fell to the ground. Javen lowered his head, when suddenly Junwoo grabbed him and ordered him to show respect when talking to the young master. Next time, it won't be limited to a fracture. MC asked, is he the last one? Junwoo answered, yes, they took care of the others. Baekjun spoke, great, let them tie him up, and then they will go down to the third basement floor. Junwoo apologized and asked, did he say the third basement floor? But everything there had already been cleaned up. After a while, they went down and Junwoo said, he thought it was an ordinary library. He would never have guessed that there was a hidden space filled with magical artifacts here. Junwoo lowered his head and said, they should have looked more closely. He apologized to the young master. Baekjun replied, it's okay. Otherwise, how could they have found it? Junwoo looked at him carefully and thought, but how did the young master know about this place? Did he plant a spy here? Baekjun said, it must be somewhere around here. Junwoo watched him and thought, they say he defeated young master Yu Kangho in sparring. He really is different from his former self. He's also gained muscle mass. MC happily grabbed a piece of paper from the table and shouted, he found it. Here it is. Baekjun thought, a training magic circle. The system window reported, a training magic circle. A magic circle used by a magical clan from another world for mana training. Ancient and complex. Options. Mana training, focus enhancement. Mana training, the user is able to focus more mana while on a magic circle. Concentration enhancement, the user's concentration is enhanced while on a magic circle. MC spoke. The effects are relatively weak for his rank. He thought, but many people could benefit from this. He could put it to good use. Besides that, he ordered everything that was here to be taken to the clan estate. Junwoo asked what to do with Javen. Baekjun said to take him with them too. People from the magic tower will be visiting them soon. This should be a big surprise for them. Junwoo turned around in surprise and thought, please don't tell me that he didn't kill him because he looked into their relationship with the magic tower beforehand. He's a straggler and the magic tower is actively looking for ways to get to him. He doubts he can offer them enough information, but his disclosure alone means a lot. The young master even takes their relationship with the magic tower into account. He's completely different from what they say. He thinks that if he were like before now, the clan would not have notified them of his arrival in Seoul. The clan had already recognized him as a potential heir. The system window reported that he had completed the quest. He received 200 points as a reward. After a while, Songa knocked on the door and said, young master, she's coming in. Did he call her? MC replied, yes, teacher Han Songa. She looked inside the room in surprise and said, his books. Baekjun said, he's already read them all and preferred to get rid of them. But that's not important now. He held out a book and told her to take this. Songa looked at it in surprise and said, this? MC asked. She seemed interested in this book. Songa said yes, but she doesn't think she deserves something like that. MC asked her to just take it. Only a woman can use this, so it's useless to him anyway. Songa said, but still. MC interrupted her and said, he understands what she wants to say, but doesn't she think she should at least hide her emotions? He told her to stop pretending like she doesn't want to take it and to take it already. If she refuses again, he will burn it. Songa screamed, but she shyly took the book and said, okay, thank him. MC looked at her and thought, now he should. He coughed loudly and looked thoughtfully at the folded sheet of paper. He spoke, however, he wonders how to use this thing. He has no idea. Baekjun thought, he will trust this to her, Han Songa. Songa asked, is he holding a magic circle in his hands? MC asked in surprise, is this, really? He got it from the Stragglers database, but there were no instructions included with it. Songa thoughtfully took it from his hands and said, it's not a skill book. It's some kind of consumable artifact. Should she install it for him? Baekjun replied, yes, please. Songa said the installation is quite simple. First, you need to open a circle where he wants to use it and just pour your mana into it. She sat on the floor and released her mana onto a piece of paper, after which a large seal appeared on the floor. MC yelped in surprise and thought, actually, he already knew everything. It just consumes too much mana. Songa said it requires a lot of mana, but once installed, he can use it again. What kind of magic circle is this? He read the description, right? MC replied, it said it was a magic circle for mana training support. Songa said, I understand. Baekjun said she could freely use it any time when he wasn't training. Maybe they should try it now? Songa replied, that's a good idea. She sees he has redecorated his private office. At that moment, Seungmin entered the room and said he just wanted to let you know that guests from the magic tower will be arriving tomorrow. MC said, hi Seungmin. Baekjun asked, tomorrow? It's much earlier than he thought. Are they coming to check the transportation magic circle? Seungmin replied, yes. It seems he already knows, but did he hear that his ex-fiancée will be coming here too? MC said, yes, his ex-fiancée too. He widened his eyes in confusion and froze. Songa said, wow, she hasn't seen her for so long. She wonders how young Miss Jin Soyeon is doing. MC thought, Jin Soyeon? He remembered how he shouted to her to calm down. This won't change anything. This is the revenge she wants. Soyeon stood in front of him, and behind her were bright magic seals. MC screamed, what an idiot. What is this? Mana shot towards him, and then the word game over appeared on the screen. MC screamed in irritation, what a nightmare. He exhaled and said, he failed here again. Jin So-yeon, along with Han Chan-woo, is the main protagonist of this game and the next leader of the Magic Tower. She's simply imbalanced. She was born with S-class and A-class stats. And if he fails to prevent the collapse of the Magic Tower, which will happen during the second major event, Soyeon will enter berserk mode. In short, she will completely go crazy. She is so powerful that she can completely wipe Korea off the face of the earth. But such a dangerous person? Is it his ex-fiancé? The settings change randomly with each playthrough, and these settings are linked to the choice system from the previous game. How many times and how has he played as Yoo Baekjun? It seems like a lot, but he doesn't know the intricacies of the settings. Maybe there are other hidden mechanics besides these? If this was just a game where he's having trouble, he would just try a new try. However, this is reality. When he dies for real. He realized that he possessed Yoo Baekjun from the game when Shin Woo-hyun was chasing him, because it was exactly the same situation as in the game. And as proof, he survived, overcoming these events exactly the same way as it was in the game. But why are there settings that he doesn't know about? Or did they appear when he reincarnated into the character? If so, MC clenched his fist and said, "Nightmare. How did this happen?" Sungmin asked, "Young master, is everything okay?" Baekjun waved his hand and said, "Nonsense. So what time will they come from the magic tower tomorrow?" Sungmin replied, "I think tomorrow morning." MC replied, "Okay. It's already late, so they need to finish. They need to prepare to meet them." After a while, when night fell, MC was sitting on the seal and meditating. The heart method of destroying heaven plus the training magic circle. MC decided to take everything apart in order. First, there are unpredictable variables. In addition to the relationship with Jin Soyeon, there may be other events that he doesn't know about. Second, he has no definitive information to rely on. How did he become Yoo Baekjun? Can he return? What happened to his real body? Who is the great overlord? He knows nothing, however. One thing is certain. There is a high probability of his return after completing the game for Yoo Baekjun. This way, he will survive and see how it all ends. He got up from the floor, got dressed, and said, this is the best he can do right now. First, he needs information. The next day, Jungyeon exhaled and spoke. She was tired to death. Father, Yoon Bin, Yoo Junyeon's confidant, said he went to the underground training center. He asked his opinion, but he said that he would not go, so they can take them as they see fit. Junyeon replied, I understand. Jin Soyeon said she would come too, right? Bin replied, yes. Junyeon thoughtfully asked, what could be interesting in this remote mountain area of Mount Seoraksan? No matter how much she thought about it, she couldn't understand why the heir to the magic tower chose this place. They were standing near the teleportation magic circle of the head of the holy sword, the magic tower. MC said they were early. Junyeon narrowed her eyes and said, Yoo Baekjun. He said, they haven't seen each other for a long time, sis. She replied, yes. Is Master Han Songa his direct mentor now? Songa replied, yes, Mrs. Yu. Junyeon said, that's interesting. When she recommended her, she said she wasn't going to follow anyone. Songa lowered her head and MC asked, people's opinions change, don't they? He guessed she liked him more than her, sis. Junyeon covered herself in mana and said irritably, what a funny speech he's making. Silence hung in the air, and Junyeon turned around and said, okay, now's not the time. MC looked after her thoughtfully, after which a scream rang out. The circle had already activated. Baekjun walked towards it and thought, no need to be nervous, he just needs to do everything like it was in the game. Soyeon came down from the magic seal and said, it's time for a check. There was so much dust around. Jin Soyeon, the heir to the magic tower, stood on the snowy ground. Junyeon approached her and said, it's been a while, Soyeon. She turned around and replied, yeah, from the conference last year, I think. It's good to see her looking healthy, sis. Junyeon asked, why would she be sick? And she's only gotten prettier, baby. Soyeon asked again. Yeah? She looked away and said, there's someone here she hasn't seen in a long time. MC turned and looked at her. He said slightly nervously, they haven't seen each other in a long time, Soyeon. She asked again, Soyeon? So informally. MC's eyes widened in fear and thought, is this wrong? Then, he asked, older sister? Soyeon asked again, sister? Baekjun froze and thought, he's finished. Some time ago, Sona said, well, actually, she remembers that they got along pretty well. It seems Jin Soyeon liked him, young master. MC folded his arms across his chest and asked, so she means to say that they didn't break up because they had a fight? Songa replied, yes. Instead of fighting, the head of the family acted unilaterally. If he has short-term memory loss, pharmacist Ju Jun-won can help. It's quite possible, some medicine, tincture, or pill. Currently, Baekjun stood in front of Soyeon and thought, Han Songa. She said they were good friends. She said everything was fine between them. He had no choice. Since it had come to this, she would do it her way. Baekjun spoke up. She said she came to Mount Seoraksan because she needed to find something. Soyeon answered, that's right. She created frost magic and said she wanted to develop her newfound power. In this extremely cold, remote area of Mount Seoraksan, she wanted to build up her magical power. MC looked at the snowflake she created and said, she came to build up her power. He thinks she'll need someone to lead her to the coldest place. He asked, who should accompany her? Junyeon folded her arms and said, she doesn't have time, so she'll send someone else. MC asked, can he come? Junyeon asked, him? He doesn't know much about the mountain. Baekjun frowned and asked, but he likes to read. Has she forgotten? There's a remote place where it's very cold. Junyeon said, well, as he wishes. She thought she was fed up with it, so it was good that everything turned out this way. MC turned and asked, Master Han, could he count on her help? Songa replied, yes, young master. Soyeon asked, aren't they leaving right away? MC replied, first he needs to show her something. After a while, they stood in a room where Javan was sitting tied up on the floor. Soyeon looked at him carefully and said, she sees a lost one here. Thank you. She'll take this guy to the magic tower. Javan started to moan fearfully, which in reality meant a plea for help. Please, he'd rather die than be tortured in the magic tower. MC ordered an escort for him, so they decided to set out tomorrow morning. If they set out at night, the road would only get more difficult. It doesn't really matter whether they leave right now or sleep in and leave at dawn. MC sat on the bed and said, well, it's definitely not just that. He needs to get ready too. By the way, he should complete the event when he's at Mount Seoraksan. He can ask for help tomorrow as an excuse to help with training. The system window reported, friend of the ice ghost. The treacherous ice ghosts have recognized him as their friend. The ice ghosts who see the mark on him will be glad to see him. Baekjun thought that the mark itself isn't anything special, but it's absolutely necessary to complete the Tears of the Snowfield event. Among the various events happening in this world, there are those that can lead to serious disasters if not prevented in time, and the Tears of the Snowfield is a prime example. If he doesn't deal with the evil spirit of the ice tiger now, it will descend from the mountain, find its body, and destroy several cities. He needs to deal with the creature now when it's not strong enough. It would be a good idea for him to learn various skills and traits to make things easier. He doesn't have enough points. If he completes the Tears of the Snowfield event, he will be able to level up his Tome of the God of War. Heroes Road has a system called Challenge Quest. If he has a Tome of the God of War, it will be supplemented by an achievement system. The important thing is that this advanced system awards points for each achievement. Once he unlocks the achievement, it will be significantly easier to accumulate points. And to do this, he must first level up his Tome of the God of War. MC fell onto the bed and exhaled, saying, he has so much to do. After a while, Soyeon looked up and said, it's cold. Are they leaving right now? Baekjun replied, there's no reason to delay, so yes. She turned around and asked, okay, but why do they need so many things? MC looked at his backpack, puzzled, and replied, that's it. She'll understand when they get there. Anyway, he smiled and said, let's go. They walked out the gate and headed out. Soyeon held up her hood and thought, the storm was blowing harder than she thought. The storm was great for building up, but she couldn't see anything in front of her. At this speed, if a monster appeared, it would be hard to protect Baekjun. Soyeon said, Baekjun, she can't see anything. They should stick together. MC looked away thoughtfully when suddenly Soyeon screamed, Baekjun. From behind, he grabbed the wolves that were trying to attack him and slammed him into the ground. He asked for forgiveness, but he didn't hear what she said because of the storm. Soyeon walked up to him and looked down carefully. Baekjun asked, what? She answered, no, nothing like that. MC asked again, really? She was thinking. She was worried. She didn't think she should have. Moreover, Soyeon turned around and saw the monsters who were talking. The smell, they can smell a person. Delicious. At that moment, a bright beam of energy hit the body of one of the monsters. It hit several more monsters, and Soyeon said, this is not the end. She extended her hand to the side, and the monsters rushed to attack and screamed loudly. Soyeon activated bright magic seals and sent a huge stream of fire towards the creatures. MC said, wow. He thought, this is incredible. Even at the very beginning of the game, she is so strong. Even if it is cheating, it can't be that sneaky. However, at this level of power, he turned around and saw a large pack of wolves behind him. Baekjun thought, as expected, they naturally attracted attention. It looks like there are quite a lot of enemies here. Soyeon turned around and waved her hand, and the stream of fire struck the creatures, and MC fought back with his frost power. Several more monsters appeared from the side, after which Baekjun thought, even the leader, they are starting to irritate. He said that he will take care of these guys. Soyeon looked at them and thought, there are quite a lot of them. The monsters ran towards them, but she used the fire magic stream again. She turned her head to the side, where Baekjun was attacking the wolves at that moment. He wiped his chin and saw the scorched earth. He thought, just like Jin Soyeon from the game, she made a real mess. Soyeon said, it looks like they dealt with everyone. They can take a short break. MC answered, that's right. He held out a bottle and told her to take this. Even for her, it would be a burden to use magic like this. If she drinks this, she will restore her magic power. Soyeon looked at him and said, he's changed. MC thought, so suddenly? Did he make some mistake? He asked fearfully. What? Soyeon said, in the past, he always followed her around, calling her little sister, and he became insolent. It's good that he dealt with this burden, but he even worries about her. Baekjun asked again, a burden? Soyeon asked, doesn't he remember? They often discussed each other's life situations. He cried because he could not live up to his father's expectations. MC sighed loudly and thought he understood. The magic tower is similar to the Holy Sword clan, but it has one major difference. The position of successor is given to everyone with different opportunities. In other words, the position of the next head of the magic tower is open to everyone. Jin Soyeon probably felt a lot of pressure because of her father, Jin Baekjun, the current owner of the magic tower, and so she felt that they were in a similar position. However, he doesn't know exactly what they talked about, so continuing the conversation on this topic is dangerous. He should change the topic. He asked, since they have rested, they will go further? Soyeon asked, already? MC replied, well, there is no point in wasting time. They are almost there, so they will get there soon. Soyeon asked again, right? Baekjun said, then he will go ahead. Let her follow him carefully. Soyeon watched him closely and thought, Yumuhat clearly said that Baekjun has no talent after coming to the magic tower. And how is she supposed to understand this? She turned around and looked at the burnt trail in the ground. After a while, MC said, they have arrived. Soyeon asked again, have they arrived? But there was nothing. She looked to the side and said, no, yes, there is something. But what is it? She doesn't think it's a person. They need to go check. MC thought, as expected, she has well-developed senses. Soyeon activated detection magic and saw small creatures in the ice flow and said, those are monsters. MC interrupted her and said, those are not monsters. The creatures started asking, friend, no, it's a person, you idiot. If he's a person, then he's bad. He needs to be kicked out. Soyeon looked at the creatures and asked, and what are they then, if not monsters? MC crouched down and said, in a sense, they are fairies. The system window reported that the ice spirit friend characteristic would activate automatically. An engraved mark would appear on him. The treacherous ice spirits recognized him as their friend. The ice spirits greeted him. The creatures began to speak. Human friend? Friend. Baekjun said, these are ice spirits. Soyeon asked again, ice spirits? MC answered, yes, they are in charge of sending the souls of deceased creatures on Mount Seoraksan to the afterlife. He asked, why are they here, guys? The spirits replied, their home has been taken over. Strange creatures came and killed their friend. They are evil and scary. Baekjun asked, their friend died, and then what? The creature replied, it won't be able to enter the spirit world. Soyeon stood behind and thought, fairies also exist in this form. She felt they were different from the fairies she knew, but something was wrong. The spirit spoke, leaving only a hidden grudge. It hid in a cave. They need to send a friend to the spirit world. He's getting angrier every day. Their poor snow tiger. Baekjun asked if there was any way he could help. The spirits replied, they need the snow tiger's body. All evil spirits are bound to their bodies. They need to subdue and purify the snow tiger. They can perform the purification. MC stood up and said, so they just need to subdue the creature. What a coincidence. It just so happens that he has the tiger's body. MC took out a huge tiger body from his inventory, and Soyeon said puzzledly, she felt something was wrong. Is he trying to use her to help these fairies? MC cleared his throat and said, well, not exactly like that. Soyeon asked, is that why he packed the tiger in his subspace pocket? Baekjun replied, once they get there, she will understand everything, because this is exactly the place she's looking for. Soyeon replied, she hoped so. They went further into the cave, and the spirit said, there, in that direction, they can go further. It's dangerous further. If he pacifies the snow tiger, they will calm him down and send him to the spirit world. MC said, well, they will begin. He thought, the situation looks worse than he thought. Soyeon looked at him and asked, does he take it for granted that she will help him, right? What an impudent man he is. MC replied, there is no better place to accumulate magical power than here. Soyeon replied, perhaps he is right. She thought, it irritates her that something unpleasant happened. She thinks she knows why Baekjun brought her here. It lasted only a moment, but when she heard the old voice, goosebumps ran across her skin. It must be some kind of magical power that gives an eerie chill. Of course, there's no better place than this. She said, then they are leaving right now. MC said, but first they will accept something. Soyeon asked, what is he talking about? Baekjun said, yes. As she must have realized, a direct confrontation is impossible, so they need to be as prepared as possible. He opened his backpack, and Soyeon asked, did he make all this? MC replied, the teacher helped him, but he made it according to his own recipes. This is for her. She already took the elixir when they fought the monsters, right? Before they go, they will unfold this scroll, and then. Soyeon looked at the elixir and thought, amazing. The amount of magical power in her body is also increasing. Besides, he knows how to make a potion that increases recovery speed. She thought he just got stronger in martial arts. MC looked at her and asked, is she ready? Soyeon thought, you Baekjun. He really has grown a lot. After a while, a strong purple mana appeared around them, and a loud roar was heard. A huge tiger stepped forward, and Soyeon said, fortunately he hadn't noticed them yet. Or was he? MC looked thoughtfully and said, from restoring magic to enhancing magic using magic circle scrolls. He revealed it, and Soyeon said, even the magic circle of embodiment. The magic circle of embodiment, it materializes ghost-type monsters within range for 2 hours. Soyeon said, even forgetting the price, it must have been hard to get. MC spoke up, if the snow tiger were alive, this wouldn't be necessary. But it became an evil spirit, that's another story. It never hurts to be prepared. Well, then he would use the scroll. He placed the scroll on the magic seal and directed his mana into it, after which a huge seal appeared under the monster's body. Baekjun screamed. Now, Soyeon activated her mana and used chains. It headed towards the tiger. The chains bound the creature's body, but it was immediately able to move. Soyeon thought, this is magic power. She screamed, it won't last long. MC stomped his foot and cast a magic circle. Magic amplification plus Heaven's Doom. Mana shot towards the creature and damaged it. Soyeon continued to hold the monster's body with chains. She said, Baekjun, it's coming. The tiger roared loudly, spreading its mana. The chains cracked and Soyeon screamed, chain! The tiger left the ground and MC jumped towards the creature. He thought, every attack is fatal, even if it just grazed him. Suddenly, the tiger stopped. Soyeon directed her mana towards the creature and screamed, gravity boost. The seal attacked the monster and a bright glow appeared from its mouth. Soyeon asked, breath? MC screamed, anything but that. He performed a storm strike and hit the tiger's mouth, leaving a mark on its muzzle. Soyeon used movement magic, teleportation. MC said, just in time. Soyeon said, it's recovering too quickly. Should they continue to attack? Baekjun said, everything is fine. They are doing great. She asked, what is he going to do? He answered, that he still can. He should hit harder. They moved back and the tiger ran at them. MC used a powerful blow, plus the property manifestation. He screamed, one is not enough. He swung his fist and used a double blow. This time he was able to land a strong blow on the monster, knocking it back. He turned around and screamed, Jin Soyeon. Soyeon screamed, she knows. Inferno. A stream of fire slammed into the creature's body, pinning the tiger to the wall. It fell on its stomach, and Soyeon asked, are you crazy? Should they really keep this up? Baekjun answered, yes. Although it may seem like it has no effect now, the snow tiger is a spirit. It controls the souls of ice creatures and directs them to the right world, and it can use this ability in battle. Regardless of the damage received, it immediately absorbs the souls around itself and recovers. Soyeon asked, so what should I do then? MC ordered her to just take a closer look at the tiger. They seriously battered the creature, but it doesn't heal itself, but uses souls to attack. They are entering the second phase. summoning evil ghosts. Dark ghosts began to seep into the cave from all sides. They spoke loudly, stretching out their nasty hands. Soyeon asked, "Undead?" Baekjun answered, "No, they are spirits that wandered around Mount Siroksan." Second phase. Now the tiger turned souls into demons to attack them. Soyeon asked, "Phase what?" MC thought. At the beginning of the game, as Yu Baekjun, he didn't know how to complete the Ghostbuster quest. So the snow tiger, who became a demon, was able to go to Seoul to get his body back. And because of this, he was able to observe the disaster in which all the monsters and hunters were turning into evil spirits. Well, thanks to this, he knows all the possible ways to fight them. So they directed fire mana towards the undead. Soyeon screamed, "Flame arrow, there are too many demons. Yu Baekjun, are you sure everything is okay?" MC told her not to worry. He knew this would happen, so he prepared something in advance. Soyeon turned around and said, then he should hurry up, and she saw an ultra-powerful scroll of holy magic against the undead in his hands. Baekjun opened the scroll and, spreading his hands, activated it. A bright light erased all the demons that appeared in the cave. Soyeon said in surprise, "Orb of Light, it's a precious scroll that her father personally gave to the head of the Holy Sword Clan. Yu Baekjun, how did he get that?" MC smiled and said, "Well, he stole the best equipment in the world." Soyeon looked at him puzzled, and the tiger covered its face with its paw. MC thought essentially a snow tiger turned demon is undead, and divine magic like Light Sphere is like poison to the undead. It hasn't recovered from the powerful blow yet. He must finish it off and finish the creature. Baekjun screamed, his time has come. He clenched his fist and created a huge dragon from mana, which headed towards the tiger. Soyeon covered her face with her hand, and the tiger's body was covered in fire. A scream came from behind them. "Enough, they will do the rest." Soyeon turned around and said, "Are those ice spirits? What are they talking about? Round things?" MC looked at them and said, "A purification ritual. Ice spirits are guides for the soul to the spirit world. Therefore they know how to purify the fallen soul." The spirit spoke, "Friend, let it come back. Come on." They asked to send the tiger to the spirit world. Let it come back. The tiger's body was covered in mana, and then sharp blocks of ice appeared on the body. The tiger opened its eyes and the spirit screamed loudly. He came back. The tiger asked, "What is this?" The spirit said, "Friend, that's enough. They will go to the spirit world." The tiger asked again, "What kind of spirit world?" MC asked, "Did it come to its senses, the striped one?" It asked, "Who are they?" Baekjun answered, "They helped the creature at the moment when it went crazy, and it became a little aggressive." He asks to understand. The ice souls asked for help. He untied the pouch and crouched down next to the tiger's body. MC said, "And they also returned the body of the creature, which they accidentally found at the auction." The tiger spoke, "So it died. Do they remember how?" MC replied, "He doesn't think a spirit like it could easily fall into the hands of people." The tiger spoke, "The child, his child, he was captured. The captors had powers like his, and they all wore black armor. Although they were few in number, they were very strong. The tiger had no choice but to go to extreme measures to get his child back. But in the end, it lost consciousness due to serious wounds. It vaguely remembers what happened after that, so it must have died then. But it is glad that it was able to get the baby back before it died. It thinks it is good that it hid the baby behind the ice wall." Baekjun thought, in the game, the tiger was attacked by treasure hunters. If he deals with them now, it will complicate things, so he needs to leave them for now. The tiger said, before he goes to the spirit world, he wants to ask them for a favor. It asks to find those who killed the creature and deal with them. The tiger has a personal score to settle with them, but those who attack the tiger are dangerous. They are too dangerous. They are the type who will do anything for their own gain. MC replied, yes, he will find them and deal with them. He thought, since he will meet them during the first big event anyway. The tiger asked him to please look after his baby. Baekjun asked again, him? He is the same person as those guys who killed the tiger. Can he trust him? The tiger replied, he can. He brought its body here, and after helping the ice spirits, he saved the creature this way. MC said, he appreciates such trust, but he doesn't know if he can protect the baby tiger. He doesn't have much strength. The tiger replied, if that's really the case, he will help now, in exchange for fulfilling his request. MC thought, yes, that's how it turned out. A small ice seal approached Baekjun and covered his body. The tiger asked to accept it. The system window reported it absorbed the energy that the snow tiger stored throughout its life. Their magical power increases by 1 level. They acquired new traits and skills. The status window reported that the trait of the Cold Lord is that he can easily withstand extreme cold. The power of cold-related skills increases significantly, and the consumption of magical energy decreases. He doesn't feel the cold as much, and the colder it gets, the stronger his divine abilities become. The cold skill creates a powerful cold aura around the caster. Those who come into contact with the cold air become physically weaker. Certain effects are added depending on the terrain. Tiger said, this should help. Seoyeon looked at MC and thought, wow, Yu Baekjun's magical power has increased significantly. Tiger said, it's time. Does he know? For those of them who constantly move from the spirit world to the world of the living and back, death is just a trifle. However, Tiger turned around and the spirits looked at him with tears in their eyes. Tiger said that he can't get used to separation. MC asked, did he understand correctly that Tiger had been to the spirit world before? Please let it wait there for a little while. It helped him a lot, so it should see that he also fulfilled Tiger's request. He promises that he will definitely bring his cub to the tiger. The tiger asked, is this stupid or reckless? And yet, thanks to him, it feels relieved. Then it will wait. The spirits asked, my friend, is he really going to the spirit world later? He can't get there in a living body. He can't. Then they will give him a gift. The system window reported, the ice spirit's friend has been changed to the characteristic invited to the spirit world. He received the ability to enter and exit the spirit world. He can easily win the favor and trust of the inhabitants of the spirit world. This significantly reduces the punishment that living people usually receive for entering the spirit world. MC thought this does not have much effect right away, but it will come in handy later. He still has a lot to do. The spirit shouted, a new friend. They will go and see the snow tiger off. Bye. Soyeon asked, is that all? Are they done? MC waved at them and answered, no, there is still one more thing. He walked up to the ice block and put his palm on it, after which a secret door opened slightly. Inside was a small tiger cub with big wounds on its body. Soyeon said, the wound is deep. It looks cute. This is not good. Baekjun said, they need to treat it before it's too late. He crouched down and thought, giving this kid medicine is no different from the game. In real life, this wound looks worse than in the game. He should treat the deepest part of the wound first. He needs to leave some to give the tiger cub to drink. Soyeon looked at it and thought, this is pretty skillful, huh? She asked, did he prepare this too? MC replied, yep, he saved this in case he got seriously injured. Considering the ingredients, the effectiveness is high. Soyeon said, this is good. What kind of people could attack such a small and cute baby? Baekjun replied, those who attacked the snow tiger, they were probably treasure hunters. They search ruins and dungeons all over the world, robbing graves or hunting spirit animals. Soon enough, they will cause another big incident, which will lead to the first big event. The funny thing is, it's better to let them cause trouble for a while. MC thought it's practically impossible to stop them, and even if he stops them, everything will take an unknown turn. Now he understands that he has a mountain of work to do. Soyeon said, it seems he has solved all his issues. When will he deal with her request? Baekjun asked thoughtfully. Doesn't she feel it? While the snow tiger lived in this place, ice magic accumulated here. The frost just chills to the bones. Soyeon looked around and said, of course she feels magical power, but that's not the point. He has to protect her while she gains strength, right? He will pay for making her work. MC asked, does she want him to protect her? He has the ability to protect her from monsters, while taking care of him at the same time. Soyeon looked at the tiger cub and thought, tongue, it's so cute. Baekjun looked closely at Soyeon's touching face and wondered if she was even listening to him. After a while, they were walking through an ice cave, and Soyeon said she was a little worried about the monsters, but she was glad she had someone protecting her. MC said he owed her, so they were helping each other. Soyeon said she'd finish in 3 days, and she was counting on his help. Just like the Holy Sword Clan, there's a technique for the mind soaring to the heavens. Wizards also have their own breathing techniques for accumulating magical power, and that's the magical breathing technique. One of the reasons Jin Soyeon was chosen as the successor at such a young age was her advanced skill in the magical breathing technique. MC thought, wow, you can't distrust people like that. How many layers are there anyway? He thinks it's time to check his stats for the first time in a long time. The status window reported that Yu Baekjun has a B rank strength of 42 out of 100. A B rank agility of 47 out of 100, a B rank stamina of 45 out of 100, and a B plus rank mana of 12 out of 100. His unique ability is the Book of a God of War. His attributes are Celestial Combat Physique, Energy Source, Spirit World Invitee, and Cold Lord. His skills include Traditional Medicine, Light Walking Art, Triple Fist Technique, Triple Mind Technique, Strike, and Attribute Demonstration. MC thought his magic power had increased by 1 level. His other abilities had also improved. If this trend continues, he thinks he'll get a B plus to A grade before Yu-Tae-Ran returns. It's not that bad. It's not bad, but it's about the same. If he doesn't focus on Yu-Tae-Ran, he still has room for improvement, because Hero's Road is a game with a rapid increase in power, especially starting from the middle section. Only monsters will appear. Rank A is not enough to deal with them. MC placed his palm on the tiger cub's head and said, however, this guy will be useful in the future. He exhaled and said, now he needs to take a break and think about what to do next. So much has happened in one day, but before that, he thinks they should first deal with these creatures. Demons surrounded them from different sides. After a while, Baekjun cleared his throat and turned to look at Soyeon. He yawned and said, she really finished in 3 days. He thought it would take longer since there was so much mana here. Soyeon said, thanks to him she was able to focus solely on absorbing magical power. However, in the meantime he did a good job too. He started to get up and said, well, he can't compare. How is her mood? Soyeon replied, very good. She felt refreshed. Baekjun thought for a moment, even though she answered calmly, but after absorbing all that magical power, her already monstrous abilities must have become even more powerful. The tiger cub roared loudly, and Soyeon said happily, it seems like he woke up. Is he feeling okay now? The tiger cub opened his eyes, jumped off MC's body and walked away. Soyeon looked at him puzzled and asked, did she get too close? The tiger cub began to roar, looking at the ice wall. Soyeon asked, what is he doing? Baekjun replied, he must feel it. The emptiness. He remembered the fragments with the tiger and knelt down next to the baby. He said, it won't help, because it went to the spirit world. When it left him in his care. He knows what happened. The tiger cub meowed, and MC said, he knows where they are, and he will definitely help him meet his parent again in the spirit world. So he won't go with him? The tiger cub looked at him with tears in his eyes and threw himself on his neck. Soyeon said, He's crying so hard. MC replied, no wonder. His entire family died. Soyeon asked, is it sad when someone in the family dies? Even if they kill all their siblings to gain an absolute advantage in the struggle for the throne, in the Holy Sword family, this is not a problem for the successor. The Magic Tower is also a place where family ties mean nothing. It's not surprising that Jin Soyeon didn't get his point. Soyeon said that. Baekjun replied, generally yes. She said, I see, it's sad. He thought for a second. This baby and his body, they have such a strange fate. After a while, in the Holy Sword clan, So-ah and Sungmin happily said, young master. Baekjun put his hands in his pockets and asked, what? Were they waiting for him? Sungmin replied, of course. He looked at him in surprise and shouted, what? Young master, why did he gain weight so quickly? The MC said he was talking about his belly. It's temporary. He unbuttoned his jacket and said, and that's why. Songa fell to her knees and cried, saying, her heart. Sungmin asked fearfully, young master, did he really decide to take up poaching? The MC asked again. What? Sungmin said, young master, tigers are rare to see, but poaching. Someone in his position shouldn't be doing that. Soyeon ran up to Songa and asked if she was okay. Mentor Han Songa? No wonder her heart hurts. Let her breathe. Sungmin asked, young master, is he listening to him? The MC sighed and said, his head was spinning. He wants to rest quickly. True to her image as an animal lover, Jin Soyeon, reflecting on her sense of responsibility for the snow tiger cub, decided not to return immediately to the Magic Tower, but to stay with the clan for 3 more days. And after a while, the MC exhaled and said, just when he thought he could sleep peacefully, he was sitting in a sleeping mask made by Choi Sungmin. He said he forgot he was nocturnal. The tiger cub was sitting on a chair at that moment, and the MC said that it was a snow shadow not to bite the chair. The snow tiger cub, who had suffered a serious injury, almost regained its strength in half a day thanks to Ju Junwon's treatment. And while they were fussing with the little one, they named it Snow Shadow. As expected of a spiritual being, he understands everything he says, but Baekjun asked not to scratch the wallpaper or break the dishes. He looked at Snow Shadow, who took a stance, and asked, what? Why is he looking at him like that? Snow Shadow jumped up and hit MC in the face with his paw. It seems to him that there is no difference between a spirit and an ordinary cat. They create the same problems. He was lying on the floor and begging to be killed. At that moment, his phone received a call, and Baekjun said, Sungmin. Sungmin said, yes, young master. He found the person he was talking about. He lives exactly in the place he mentioned. MC said, great, that's good work. He will be there soon. After some time in Busan in the hills area, a loud scream was heard. Song Hyung-seok, he's inside. Let him open it. The man kicked the door and ordered them not to be stubborn. They need to resolve this amicably. The guy said, enough. Let him break it down. The fat man replied, yes, boss. They broke down the door and shouted, let them see it. He pretended he wasn't there when he was inside. Hyun-sung screamed, isn't it illegal to collect debts, to intimidate and threaten someone like that? The fat man said, a fist stronger than the law will do. They'll be quick. Don't worry about it. The guy asked, he has no right to blab after he took the money and ran away, right? Hyung-suk screamed. In the first place, he didn't even borrow it. The fat man said, that's right, his father borrowed it. However, his father used his name too. He grabbed Hyung-suk by the hair and said, they borrowed it because their family are hunters and they are rich. But if they just spend all the money, it won't be easy for them either, right? So let him do as they say and clean some gates to pay back. Hyung-suk screamed, but he's a low-level hunter, so he can't even enter the gate, and he's not going to work as a hunter. The fat man kneed him in the face and screamed. This idiot still doesn't understand. Hyung-suk grabbed his face, and the fat man clenched his fist and started hitting him. The man looked inside and said, enough. Mr. Song Hyung-suk, this isn't a problem that can be solved by talking. If he can't pay, they'll have a hard time too. They're kindly telling him ways to make money. Why doesn't a gentleman who became a hunter want to enter the gate? Hyung-suk replied, he just doesn't want to end up like his father. The man said, whether in the gate or here, you can end up disabled anywhere. The client doesn't seem to think with his head at all. He ordered them to rack his brains when suddenly Songa grabbed the fat man's fist. The fat man asked fearfully, what? The guy asked, when did she end up here? The man thought he didn't hear any noise or feel anyone entering. Who is it? Suddenly Baekjun appeared behind him and said, they have to open and close the door properly. You can't just barge in. They have no manners at all. The guy asked, who the hell is he? They won't run away? Do they even realize it? The MC interrupted him and said, he will pay the debt for this man. How much does he owe? The man replied, he doesn't know who they are, but most likely it's not an amount that can be repaid so easily. He owes 2,700,000,000. Hyung-suk looked at him and screamed, almost 3 billion. His father said he borrowed 500 million won. The man smirked and said, they forgot about the interest all this time. That's why you have to choose your family wisely. The MC replied, okay. He will offer them 2 options. The first, they take only a share of what was borrowed from them and leave quietly. The second, they don't receive a single one and go find a doctor. Baekjun said he would recommend the first option. The man asked, is he sick? He thinks they can just take the principal and leave. When they pay back the money, they have to pay back the interest. That's how the lending system has worked since time immemorial. He threw a cigarette butt in the MC's direction when suddenly a fist flew into the man's face. As he was saying, if they're talking about money, then let them count it correctly. Songa hit him and slammed him into the wall. She said, worm. He will pay with his life for disrespecting the young master. After a while, the smoke cleared and the man asked in surprise, huh? Songa looked at one of the men and said that one day he would understand who the young master was. She looked at him menacingly, and he cried out in fear and ran for the exit. Then the protagonist walked forward and said, Mentor Songa, along with the swordsman and family, must catch up with the boy who escaped. When When she finds their office, she must take everything and return the money to the victims. She walked to the exit and answered, "Yes, young master." At that moment, Song Young-suk was kneeling and looking ahead wondered, "What is this?" The protagonist approached him and asked if he was Hunter Hyung-suk. "Is he okay?" He replied, "Yes, thanks to him. But who is he?" The protagonist sat down opposite him and said that when he was little, he owed his father a favor, and his father saved him. He was surprised. His father. The protagonist confirmed this. He came because he wanted to pay off the debt he owed him, and this is how it all turned out. Does he happen to know where his father is now? He replied that he had no idea. He apologized, and he didn't want to know. Then the MC said that he should run before the others rushed in. He called someone who would deal with this. Now he wouldn't have any more problems. He replied that he had helped him so much, it was a pity he couldn't somehow express his gratitude. With these words, he reached into his pocket. The protagonist said no. He was glad he was simply paying off the debt. Then Hyung-suk handed him the accessory and said that he was asking, even if it was not enough, please, he should accept it. His father gave it to him when he was little. He thought it would be better if he kept it, young master. The protagonist smiled and said that in that case, he would accept it with gratitude. He thought, the goal has been achieved. Sometime later, in the Holy Sword Clan, Songa said, "Young master, she dealt with those moneylenders, just like he said. They were pretty bad guys. They brought a lot of trouble to the people, and there wasn't a single strong hunter among them. She hoped to test the magical skills she learned from him, but they were all so scared that they were shaking with fear, so she couldn't even try." MC walked next to her, holding an ornament in his hand, and said, "They'll have their chance soon. She shouldn't be too upset." Then she looked at the item in his hand and said, "Yes, but young master, this is the first time she's seen this medallion. He's been fiddling with this for a while. Is it something special?" He spun it in his hand and asked, "This?" After a while, Jin Soyeon, holding the item in her hand, said, "This is no ordinary medallion. It has sealing magic. This one has a pretty high level of sealing magic." But after how he treated her on Mount Seoraksan, he came again asking for help. He should come to the magic tower next time if he needs help. The protagonist thought, if he needs help? That event. Then he said, "Okay, he understands. Next time he will go there." She replied, "Okay." Then they should wait a minute while she breaks the seal. The next second, the medallion in her hand began to glow brightly, filling the entire room with a bright light. Songa, covering her hand with her hand, said in surprise, "Young master, this, isn't it an artifact?" On the table was an artifact, the Eye of the Observer, a monocle worn by a man who helped the emperor spy on people, reveals more information about the selected person. Option: Observer's View. Observer's View. He can check the status window of those he has seen with his own eyes. The protagonist, smiling, looked at this and thought, he knew it. This is the first artifact. In addition to items, Heroes Road also has artifacts with special properties. Artifacts have a characteristic that once used, it cannot be undone. Yes, it's hard to find, but it's possible, and only in rare dungeons, ruins, or during special events. Artifacts are generally divided into 3 types depending on their use. First, there are conditional artifacts, which can only be used under certain conditions and are rare. Another type are one-time use artifacts that lose power or disappear upon use. One of these is the artifact Woo Hyun was using when he came for it. And finally, the third type are artifacts that belong to a single user and are permanently available. At that moment, a system window appeared in front of him, stating that the Observer's Eye artifact had been used. He clenched his fist and thought, Observer's Eye is one of those. The system reported that the artifact now belongs to the user. Observer's Eye is always available. Then he looked to the side, one of his eyes glowing brightly. He thought, I need to check if it's bound correctly. He looked at Soyeon, and a system window appeared in front of him, which stated, Name, Soyeon, Strength C, Agility C, Endurance C, Mana A+, Unique Ability, Owner of an S-Rank Magic Tower. Features, S-Rank Magical Genius, S-Rank Mana Blessing, A-Rank Innate Composure. MC looked at her in confusion. His face began to break out in sweat, and his mentor asked, Young master, are you alright? He replied, Of course I'm fine. He thought he had never seen Soyeon's stats. At this point in the game, he could only guess. This stat is even crazier than he thought. If she's like this at the beginning, she'll soon turn into a real monster. If he can't prevent the magic tower from falling, the end will be a personal meeting with Soyeon's page. No matter what happens, he must prevent the magic tower from falling. To do this, he needs more strength. The plot is mostly the same as in the game, but events like senior teacher Jaeyeon throwing a magic ball at him also revealed new information. Soyeon was Baekjun's ex-fiancée. He clenched his fist and thought, to prepare for other known events, he needed to become stronger as soon as possible. His growth rate was still good, but it would be better to speed up. Of course, he needed to go to that place, find traces of the gods, and unlock the achievement system. He thought it was time for Muhak to summon him. At that moment, a maid peeked into the room and said, Young master, the head of the family is calling him. He smiled and replied, Okay, he'll be right there. After a while, the head of the family spoke and they all gathered. The others replied, Yes, father. He said, Kang-ho. He heard that all his wounds were healed by pharmacist Jungwon, and yet he always sits in his room? So what does he think? He wonders if his skills have improved. He answered hesitantly, Well, Muhak said it couldn't be helped. The protagonist, looking at his brother, thought, True strength is admitting your own weaknesses, which you don't even want to think about. What's the difference between locking yourself in a room and running to the mountains? Then the head of the family said, He's worse than trash. He's giving him one last chance. Jaeon, she answered. Yes. She used the remote, and a map appeared on the wall behind them. Muhak said, a gate has appeared on Mount Seoraksan. As they can see, there are 4 in total. The gates vary in difficulty and location. Gate number 4 is the most difficult. MC thought, the time and place of appearance are the same as in the game. Gates leading to another world. In Heroes Road, there are 2 main types of gates. The first is a spewing gate, spewing monsters from the moment it appears. The second is a penetrating gate, which you must enter yourself and pass the test. If the penetrating gate is left unattended for too long, it will release monsters just like the spilling gate. Furthermore, if the gate is not cleared within the allotted time, it will reach the release stage, at which point the monsters will only become stronger. Then, the head of the family said that the reason the 4th gate is the most difficult is not only because of its size, but also because of its location and the circumstances, which are not particularly favorable. A gate has appeared in a dungeon. The time for the gate's release is approaching. Min said that means they need to close it in time when clearing the dungeon. Jaeon said yes, that's right. Jungyeon thought that to win her father's favor, she should clear the spilling gate. But the risk is too great. If one of the family's talents dies, it will be her fault. Then the protagonist said he will head to the 4th gate. The head of the family looked at him and said, he heard that this is the hardest part, and he's still going there. He replied, yes, that's the plan. He pointed at the map and added, instead of turning away from a difficult situation, he must face it head-on. If he can become the head of the Holy Sword, he'll face even more difficult situations in the future. The others looked at him in confusion, and then Muhak answered, yes, indeed. He's in charge of clearing gate number 4. The protagonist smiled and said, yes, father. He thought, well, now it's time to set out. It's time to search for the traces left by their great ancestors. Before heading to the gate, you need to prepare a few simple things, but some items are essential for clearing. In particular, a system window appeared in front of the protagonist, stating B rank Berserker Plus, a trait only available to those obsessed with battle. It increases the body's abilities and speed for a certain period of time, and the effect intensifies with each defeated enemy. Once the effect wears off, side effects will appear. MC thought, and someone with high growth potential, someone not under Tarang's influence, capable of resisting his persuasion, 2 trainees. After a while, dressed in warm down jackets, they shouted, young master, it's so cold here. The protagonist thought, Park Chunkyung and Chon Minju, trainees under Master Jaeon, will become A-rank hunters in an instant after completing their training. MC turned around and thought, but since they are still trainees, they are sensitive to the cold. He told them to follow him quickly, otherwise they would freeze to death if they missed him. At that moment, Songa looked at the protagonist and said she thought they had arrived. Young master, ahead of them, in the snowy valley, was a staircase leading downwards. They began to descend deeper, and the protagonist, looking around, thought that the dungeons were much deeper than he thought. At that moment, Minju, peeking around the corner, said that it was quite deep. It seemed like they were descending forever. Then she was surprised to see a glow ahead and said, wow, she didn't know there was such a place on Mount Seoraksan. Chongkyung sighed and said, breathtaking. Songa added, but everything is a little strange, too quiet. The protagonist walked forward and said that the family discovered this place using a gate detector. No one has gone down here, but if you look closely at the wall, you can see traces here that look like bloodstains. With these words, he ran his hand along the wall and added, there was probably a clash between the monsters from this dungeon and the monsters that came out of the gate, but he doesn't see any corpses, not a single body. What do they think the cause could be? Solna said, could it be a poisonous mantis? He replied, right, master. Chunkyung, does he know anything about the poisonous mantis? He replied, yes, Jaeon told them. The poisonous mantis is the top predator among monsters. If it recognizes food, it will eat anything, even a corpse. The monster looks like a praying mantis, but it has a poisonous tail, as well as excellent hearing and smell. It has many dangerous characteristics, but the most dangerous is its group lifestyle. If they see one, they should know that there are at least several more around. That's why even top-level hunters avoid this monster. So if they ever encounter one, they should run away without looking back. At that moment, the trainees simultaneously thought, that's what they were told about the poisonous mantis back then. It's more dangerous than it seems. The protagonist turned to him and called out to them. He asked, did they bring a rope? They were surprised. What? Then Minju asked, but why would he need it? Songa shouted. Young master. The MC pulled out a scroll and said, then now they should let him tell them the strategy. A poisonous mantis lurked between the dark, winding cliffs. This species' eyesight has deteriorated over time. The mantis uses its sense of smell to distinguish prey from its own kind. The protagonist stood behind the monster and said, so they smeared themselves with its bodily fluids to launch a surprise attack. After a while, Chunkyun charged, cutting off the mantis's arm. The MC thought, they were aiming for the mantis's weapon first. They cut off its front legs and tail. Left without a weapon, he began shouting for his comrades. The next second, the mantis began to scream loudly, but Minju sharply kneed it in the head. The protagonist thought, and among them is Songa, who has the greatest magical power among them, and activates the Scroll of Silence to completely remove the sound. They repeated this process to capture a total of 10 poisonous mantises. After some time, the captured mantises were behind the barrier. MC asked how much time was left before the scrolls wore off. She replied, about 5 minutes. Songa then looked at the protagonist and asked, Young master, will everything really go as he said? If not, he folded his arms and said that everything would be fine. Even if something didn't go according to plan, he had a spare. He took out a pouch and looking at the others said, "Here." Do they all remember his words? They answered affirmatively. He took out a vial and said he brought extra vials with him so they wouldn't panic if they threw it incorrectly. They replied, "Yes, young master." Then Songa, looking at the vial in her hand, thought, the young master is always prepared to face any monster. That's why he values the subspace pocket so much. Great talent, preparation, and extensive knowledge. As expected, she has a lot to learn from. Then the protagonist looked to the side and shouted, "The silence period is ending. Everyone, cover your ears." After that, he grabbed the sound amplification scroll, opened it, pointed it straight at the monsters, and shouted, "Come on, they must scream at the top of their lungs." The next second, the monsters began to emit powerful screams. A huge number of praying mantises began descending directly toward them, and MC said, "We need to take this." Minju, looking ahead, thought, "There are so many of them. They're sitting on top of each other. Could the young master really get rid of so many with his plan?" Then she threw the vessel forward. The mantis, noticing this, stopped. The protagonist turned around and shouted, "Now, throw it." The plan to destroy the poisonous mantises began with adding a special oil they had made themselves. This small amount, given the number of individuals that had arrived, was insignificant. He concentrated fire energy in his leg and then directed the fire energy forward. He thought that this small explosion would cause a fire, and they would transfer the fire to each other. What a thrill, indeed. The next second, the monsters were covered in fire. MC walked forward and said that they were left with the queen. He stopped near the huge mantis and thought, fortunately, she was completely obsessed with her eggs. This meant that now was the perfect time for a surprise attack. Then, he called Songa and said that he thought she could use her unique ability for the first time in a long time. What would she say? She looked at him in surprise, then said she still wasn't very good at using it. After using it, she'd be incapacitated for a while. "Will it be okay?" he replied. "It's the last one, anyway." She said okay. Then she closed her eyes and began concentrating energy in her body. The next second, she opened them, glowing brightly with powerful energy. She concentrated the energy in her hand, and the protagonist thought, Songa's unique ability is the Phantom Sword technique. It allows one to create and use a Phantom Sword, and there's also the ability to create anywhere from 1 to 10 swords and attack with them. The next second, Songa crouched on the ground, and a huge number of Phantom Swords appeared around. The protagonist thought, however, the consumption of magical energy is high, so the use time is short, and after using this ability, it causes severe fatigue. But during use, Songa's techniques are comparable to an S-class hunter. The next second, she kicked off the ground and, jumping at the monster, declared that she would quickly deal with it. She suddenly launched several slashing attacks, aiming them straight at the huge praying mantis's neck, and then jumped to the ground. Chunkyung said in surprise, "This huge guy instantly became like that." Minju, covering herself with her hand, said that this was the first time she saw teacher Songa's unique abilities. MC thought, "Songa, excellent." Then the praying mantis's body fell to the ground, and the protagonist noticed a bowl in front of him. He called out to Songa and asked, "Master, is she okay?" She knelt down and replied, "Yes, she's just a little tired." He said that he understood perfectly. "Okay," he suggested taking a break. She was surprised. "What?" Then he walked up to the huge bowl, bit his finger and released a few drops of his blood directly into the bowl, after which a bright light appeared from it. Chunkyung was surprised. "Light?" Minju shouted. "Young master, this is dangerous." Songa was surprised. "Young master, will he pass this test?" He replied, "Of course." Then he waved his hand and, turning slightly, said, "Okay, he'll be back soon." After he disappeared, a system window appeared in front of him, saying, "God of War's Testing Grounds." This is a testing ground created by the God of War to test his successors. He must pass the test and find an incredible opportunity. The reward is 500 points. The protagonist found himself in a new place. A huge number of ghostly shadows stood before him. They said that they served the great God of War and would begin to test him to see if he was worthy of being the successor. MC replied, "So be it." Then one of the shadows charged. The protagonist wondered if these guys were really shadow warriors, if they were idiots who kept reviving despite at the number of deaths. Well, maybe the God of War wanted to test how he, his successor, could fight against a large number of enemies. At that moment, he repelled the shadow's attack and drawing his sword shouted, "They're too annoying," he thought. Only newbies would aimlessly kill so many warriors. Since these shadow warriors were actually clones, there must be another solution to this problem. He thought about it and found that nothing had changed since he played. If he could catch this guy, the main body of the shadow warriors, then the first trial would be passed. He looked straight at the main body and said, thinking about the next trial, he couldn't pass up this opportunity. He began concentrating energy in his body and said, "Come on, idiots," because he needs to start accumulating berserk energy. A system window appeared in front of him, saying, Berserk, rank B+, increases his abilities for 5 minutes. The effect intensifies the more enemies he defeats. The duration resets with each enemy kill. Then he suddenly charged and, swinging his sword, shouted, "That's 3 at the beginning." He thought, since clones are usually illusions, killing them doesn't help the energy accumulation. At that moment, he jumped aside from the attack and thought, but these guys are different from ordinary clones. Contrary to the meaning of the word shadow, they have a form. Having a physical form doesn't just mean he's susceptible to debuffs. It also means he can build up energy for a berserker by killing them. Furthermore, if he keeps killing them like this, a berserker with full energy, a cheat that increases all stats by 1 level, but only for 5 minutes. He asked, So, should he put an end to this one? A system window appeared in front of him, saying, "It emits powerful cold energy, concentrating around the caster." The shadows froze, and he said he needed to move quickly because of the temporary buff. It would end here for him. At that moment, he approached the main body and thanked it for the energy, then delivered a slashing blow. The next second, the ice on the shadows began to melt, and the next second, the shadows themselves vanished into thin air. The protagonist smiled and said, "Well then, until the energy runs out, he will become acquainted with the legacy of the great ancestors." Then Nakal, sitting on the throne, said, "Welcome, successor." He had passed the first test and finally made it here. How much time had passed outside? MC replied that he didn't know how long he had lived, but it was now 2035. He thought about it. He knew it was the one. Nachal exclaimed, 2035. A long time had passed, but no one had been able to find this place for so many years. The protagonist said, "He hid it so deep in Mount Siraxan and hoped someone would wander here?" In response, he concentrated energy in his body and shouted, "Well, good. Now that a worthy successor has appeared, his name is Nachal, the heir. If he wants to inherit the will of the god of war, he must show him his strength." The next second, the protagonist abruptly attacked him with his foot, using a storm kick and attribute transformation. At that moment, Nachal recoiled from the blow, leaving a mark on his mask from his foot, and he said, "Not bad." The next second, MC used a kick and attribute transformation. This blow sent Nachal flying backwards. The protagonist thought, if Nachal's abilities were compared to those of a hunter, he was somewhere around A level or A+. Even if he knew all of his moves and attacks, he was still too difficult an opponent for him. If he wanted to keep up with him, he would have to use all possible moves. He had to enter the second phase while the berserk effect was still active. Then Nal appeared behind him, energy concentrated in his body. MC frowned and thought, the very first right flank. At that moment, a weapon strike was approaching him, but the protagonist blocked it with his hands. Nahal was surprised. He was blocking it with force. Interesting. The protagonist frowned and thought, he's too strong. Then he used phantom spirit steps. He thought Nahal had two phases. He ducked away from the incoming attacks and thought it was easy to make a mistake due to unexpected attacks. In fact, the first phase is a test of strength. Then he kicked him again, sending the opponent flying to the ground, and then MC concentrated energy into his fist and followed up with that. He stood behind Nachal, who was lying on the ground, and thought, so if he proves his strength in a short period of time, the first phase will end. Then he jumped to the side and wondered if it worked. The berserker action was over. The whole point of the skills is to quickly transition to the second phase, as he has dealt enough damage in the game time. From now on, everything is for real. Simply running away won't be enough. The next second, a powerful explosion occurred, and Nachal rose from behind a cloud of smoke and said that his strength was impressive. Excellent. Honestly, he can't help but admire it, but he directed an attack forward and then sighed in surprise. He added, this is not enough to defeat him. He gripped his weapon tighter, and the protagonist thought, the beginning of the second phase. Nachal raised his spear above himself and shouted, this spear is called the Gungnir Lightning Spear, an item that was obtained by overcoming the disaster that befell Jongseon in the past. He sent the weapon towards him and shouted for him to feel the power of lightning. Lightning along with the weapon flew forward, creating a small explosion, and MC jumped to the side and thought that he must hold out until the next pattern appears. Can he endure this? Nachal asked, is he running away again? He doesn't understand. It's impossible to escape from here while the battle is going on. He must remember this. Then the protagonist abruptly turned and ran. He thought, isn't this guy the final boss of the entire world? Nachal swung his weapon again and said that he runs like a rat and this is the heir of the god of war. He must demonstrate to him that he is the heir of the god of war. The protagonist said all he does is throw his damn spear and talks non-stop. He continued to run and breathe loudly, and then jumped again from the attack, and Nachal looked at him angrily and thought, enough. He said that he doesn't even think about fighting him properly. He does nothing but run away. He disappoints him, the heir. The protagonist thought, that's a phrase. Nachal added, there's nothing more to expect from him. He failed the test and will die here. He concentrated energy in his fist and shouted, Thunder Dragon. He stepped forward and then shouted, strike. The fiery creature rushed forward, and the protagonist thought, here it is, the Thunder Dragon strikes. Right now, I need to gather all my strength. He concentrated energy in his hands and used a counterattack. A barrier began to protect his body while the magical creature tried to break through. Nachal shouted in surprise, it's a counterattack. MC began to tense up and thought, the Thunder Dragon's strike is Nachal's finishing blow. Of course, even if he put all his magical power into it, he wouldn't be able to stop it. Then, he grabbed the magical creature and said, once again, he will return it. Then he turned the dragon and pointed it at his opponent, and he shouted in surprise, what is this? Then the protagonist grabbed the Gungnir and pushing off the ground, jumped up. He asked, did it fail? Who said that? With these words, he plunged the weapon into Nahal's chest, and he said, this. Everything was calculated from the start. Was it he who failed? He congratulated him. Heir, the test is passed. MC smiled and said, that's right, they will see each other again. Then he picked up the weapon again and looked at it. A system window appeared before him, stating, Gungnir Thunder Spear, rank A+. A spear bestowed by the gods upon a hero from another world. Containing divine power, it can be used to freely manipulate lightning. its rank has declined due to long-term neglect. He can restore its rank by performing certain actions and increase it by completing special tasks. Options: Thunderclap, Power of the Thunder God, Return. Thunderclap envelops the spear in thunder and lightning, imbuing it with an electric elemental skill. Magic power is constantly consumed during use. Power of the Thunder God increases resistance to thunder and increases the power of thunder-based attacks. Return: even if the spear falls from the wielder's hands, it returns to them if it is within a certain range. The protagonist said, rank A-. Just thinking about restoring his rank and completing special missions already gave him a headache. He'd think about it later. Right now, he needed to take care of something. He opened the chest and noticing the book, said, Dust. A system window appeared before him, stating, Dragon Fang Spear Mastery rank B+1. This spear technique is used by an ancient warrior, further refined by the outstanding warrior who served him. It allows one to throw a spear. Spiral Spear. A spear shrouded in magical power that returns at high speed, pursuing the enemy. 9 Dragon Fangs delivers 9 strikes with a powerful wind current, striking the enemy. Lightning Dragon can only be used by the wielder of the lightning spear. Infuses the spear with the power of the lightning god, unleashing a furious lightning dragon at the enemy. The protagonist thought this was a special skill that would allow one to level up depending on one's understanding of the Dragon Fang Spear mastery, and as one's level increases, one can master new skills. A system window appeared before him, stating, Dragon Fang Spear Mastery is registered in the Book of the God of War. As his Dragon Fang Spear skill level increased, he would be able to gain new enlightenments based on the secret technique. He thought about it, but he didn't want to go through all this trouble just for that. The system reported that traces of the War God had been found. As a result, the War God's Book of the Dead would level up. The book in his hands began to glow, and then the system reported that the War God's Book of the Dead achievement system had been unlocked. MC thought about it. The achievement system awarded additional points for each special achievement. As points accumulated faster, more skills and stats could be mastered. He then looked at the open book floating in the air and said, okay, I think I've found everything I need here. Should he go back before he passed out? The system window in front of him said, in the Dragon Fang Spear skill, it was written that some secrets of the Heavenly Fist art had been preserved. Information about the Heavenly Fist art has been added. He said, right, it was something like that. After he finds the subspace artifact, he also needs to find the art of the Heavenly Fist. So much to do. Meanwhile, the trainee asked, Master Songa, will the young master be all right? She remained silent, and then, looking at the cup, said that she understood their concerns. But the young master was a strong man, so nothing bad would happen to him. She thought, even though she said that, it had already been a day since he disappeared. She not only restored all her magic power, but also dripped blood from her finger, just like the young master did. But nothing happened. At that moment, when the protagonist appeared behind them, she cried out in surprise. Young master! He looked at her and said that he was dying. That's enough. It's time. Before he could finish speaking, he collapsed to the ground, exhausted. The others cried out in alarm. Young master? What's this? 3 nights after the protagonist returned to the clan, he thought, well, the atmosphere is heavy. The head of the family spoke up. Kangho, everyone but him managed to clear the gates. How so? He answered uncertainly. Well, because. Muhak said, okay, let his mentor tell it. The girl cried out in surprise. Her? He told her to spill the beans, or he'd punish her too. She replied, young Master Kango said they had to clear the gates faster than anyone else, so he tried to speed things up, but if it had been slower, the young master would have definitely succeeded. If he, the head of the family, raised his hand and ordered her to stop, he didn't want to hear excuses. Kangho, does he have anything to say? He replied in the negative. He said Kangho was supposed to go to the meeting next week, but Baekjun will go instead. Kangho slapped his chest and shouted, Father, this is the job his older brother left him, to entrust this to this guy without his consent. At that moment, Daekwon spoke up. Young Master Kangho, does he mean that the clan leader's orders must be coordinated with young Master Terang? He'd better think about his answer. He objected, but if everything goes as father orders, At that moment, Jongwon slapped him on the back and said, he apologizes, young Master Kangho. He can't just stand by and watch him disobey his master's orders. Servants, they must take the young master to the mansion. They replied, yes. At that moment, Min thought they pushed Kangho to ascend to Taerang, and now they're choosing Baekjun. Even his sister, Jungyeon, had a rather serious expression. Well, she's already eliminated from the succession fight, so she doesn't care who it is. At that moment, MC watched his brother being led away and thought that this was the end for him. Kangho's failure to attack the gate wasn't just a failure. The trainees and mentors who supported his purge, most of them seriously wounded or killed, had been blinded by impatience, draining all his strength. He'd lost a significant portion of his powers and made a number of serious mistakes. This wasn't just Muhak's favoritism. Terang would likely abandon him as well. In other words, this guy no longer had a place in the family. Then Muhak announced that Baekjun would attend the meeting. He'd receive a detailed schedule through his assistants. Everyone was free to go. After a while, the tiger cub picked up a piece of meat and began to bite into it, while the protagonist, holding the piece of meat, looked at the system window and said that his stamina had increased significantly. He looked at the system window, which said Baekjun Strength B 71 out of 100, Agility B 72 out of 100, Stamina B 67 out of 100, Mana C 32 out of 100. Unique abilities: Book of the God of War rank 3, Traits: C rank Heavenly Combat Physique, C rank Energy Source, C rank Spirit World Invite FIT, A rank Frost Overlord. He thought, stats increase through training or monster hunting. They increase even more if he fights monsters stronger than him and wins. It seemed Nachal was a strong opponent. Then he said, there was about a month left until Terang's return. This level of stat increase was not bad. Once he found the artifact, he would calm down for a while and increase his stats through sparring and training. In any case, the meeting would be in a week. After the meeting, it would be even more hectic and lively. You need to train while you can. At that moment, the tiger cub bit his finger, and he screamed, "What the hell? When did he eat that one? And where did the bones go? Okay, he will give him more. Not this one, then he will play with it. First, he has to let it go." After some time, someone knocked on the door and said, "Young master, it's already morning. What would he like to eat?" Then he said in surprise, "Wow, young master, is he alive?" MC was lying on the floor and sighed heavily. Sunmin asked what he would like for breakfast. He made his own curry. Before he could finish speaking, the protagonist said that he would eat now. He replied, "Yes, everything will be ready now." Then the protagonist added, "Sunmin, is the helicopter he asked him for 4 days ago ready? He is going to leave right after breakfast." He replied, "Yes, everything is ready, but where is he going if he needs a helicopter?" He thoughtfully replied, Baeksan Island, and he was going to visit a really beautiful deserted island. After some time, they arrived at Baeksan Island. The protagonist walked forward, Songa following behind him and saying, "There's no one there." It looked like a deserted island. The protagonist replied, "Well, it's a deserted island after all, but there's not absolutely nothing here." She looked at him in surprise, and then said, "Are those ruins?" They stopped near a small abandoned building. She said she never would have thought there could be ruins on an island like that. The MC told her to take a closer look at the wall. It was a plant from another world. She noticed that it was true. The gate had been neglected for a long time, and there were signs of erosion. It seemed like a long time had passed since it was destroyed. Moreover, this door also didn't seem to have been opened before. However, it seemed that it could not be moved by ordinary force. The protagonist reached into the pouch and, taking out a weapon from it, asked Master Songa why she thought they should open this. He took out the gun near and considered if they could destroy it. Then he concentrated the energy in the weapon and abruptly threw it at the door, smashing everything in front of him. They walked further, and Songa cried out in surprise, "Young master, is this the same spear he obtained in the last dungeon?" He turned slightly and, smiling, said that it was true. "The lightning power of this one is great, but there was something more important." She was surprised, huh? He told her to take a closer look at the anomaly. She frowned, looking ahead, and then cried out in surprise, "Is this an artifact?" The protagonist walked forward and extended his hand toward the cube floating in the sky. Songa cried out, "Young master?" He replied that everything was fine. Then he took out the cube and a system window appeared in front of him, which said, Subspace Monster, Artifact. An artificial life form that a renowned alchemist spent his entire life creating. Creates a subspace that is part of the artificial life form. Option, Monster Master. Monster Master guarantees the right to freely manipulate the subspace monster. Items can be safely stored and retrieved from the subspace. Then the protagonist pointed his hand with the weapon forward. The space in front of him tore, revealing a mouth with sharp teeth. Then it absorbed the weapon, and Songa said in surprise, "Young master." In the air, someone's mouth swallowed the spear. He thought, great, it works well. And then the toothy mouth spat the weapon back out, and she said in surprise, "Now it's spat out." He asked, why is she so surprised? Is it so surprising? The subspace artifact is an artifact perfect for Baekjun, who has to use different weapons depending on the situation and environment. She said, "It's like a living being. Compared to the bag he always carried with him, this is much more practical." He replied, "Yeah, he thinks it will be of great help in the future." He suggested continuing the search. Maybe there's something more useful. After a while, Songa started rummaging through the shelves and asked, "But how did he know there was an artifact here?" He replied, "From the books he'd read before. They said there were ruins here, but no one could get into them for a long time. So he decided to come and check. Maybe there really was some artifact here." Then she was surprised and said, "Young master, I think she's discovered something." She took out a small diagram and handed it to him. He took it in his hand and looked at it. He asked, "How do you make a golem?" He didn't quite understand. Songa said she didn't either. Then he moved on and told her to take it with her. Seoyeon would be delighted if they gave it to her. She replied, so he still has feelings for her. He looked at the system window that appeared in front of him and said, "That's nonsense. If these are really the golem's creation sites, then his family has no use for it." The system window said the achievement, Relic Hunter. Relic Hunter, he must explore the dungeon and obtain his first artifact and item. The reward is 300 points. Well, he smiled and thought, okay, the achievement is completed. Then he walked forward and said, "It looks like there's nothing else to do here, so they should go." "Oh, master, is there still a lot of fuel in the helicopter?" She was surprised. "What? Yes, a lot." He said, "Well, before they return, he suggested they look in one place." After some time, the helicopter stopped on the island. Songa, leaning over, said, "This scroll." MC, opening the scroll, said, "A scroll for underwater breathing." She was surprised. "So he means to say that someone dived underwater using this?" He answered, "That's right. As far as he remembers, there are ruins above them around this island. Those who came before them were probably treasure hunters." He offered to go down too. She was surprised. "What? He's kidding, right?" Then they approached the cliff, and she cried out in surprise. "Here!" The protagonist, holding the scroll in his hand, looked at her and replied that he wasn't joking. They had to see it with their own eyes. They had the scroll. She awkwardly replied that she would wait on dry land. But the next second, the protagonist grabbed her by the shoulders and abruptly jumped down. She screamed in fear. Sir? Then they found themselves underwater. She closed her eyes and covered her nose, and the protagonist asked why she had closed her eyes so tightly. Then she opened her eyes, and they were in a barrier. She looked around in surprise and said, wow. Then the protagonist looked ahead and asked, that's where they were going? They flew forward, and he said, here it is. They were swimming towards the flooded ruins. Then Songa said she had a feeling a monster could appear at any moment. The protagonist said it had indeed been here. If you looked closely, the monster's bones, the sword marks, and the altar, there might have been something here. Perhaps the items on the altar were guarded by monsters, but there was nothing here. What do you think could have happened, master? She answered thoughtfully. Maybe it was the work of treasure hunters. They defeated the monsters, stole the treasure, and escaped. He replied that that was true, and then he walked forward and said, okay, now they know exactly what happened. And now, he suggested they go back. She replied, yes, but what kind of treasure was it that they would get all the way here? The protagonist turned slightly and said, the ways of the demon god. He thought the first major event, the Great Invasion, would soon begin. The Great Invasion, the sudden appearance of a demon from another world in the skies above Seoul. This is an event to stop the invasion of demonic invaders. All of this will happen for a very simple reason. The demonic god paths that the treasure hunters took. The paths summon demons from another world, and it is an item that creates so-called gates. MC then said that if they fail to properly respond to the Great Invasion, Seoul will turn into a sea of fire. The problem is that this invasion is essentially a guaranteed disaster. He thought, then why not let the treasure hunters take advantage of this? Since if they interfere, everything will only get worse. The underwater dungeon he visited today is absolutely impossible to clear with his current stats. He was training, his body covered in sweat, while doing handstands. He thought that because the seal of the demonic god path has weakened, the monsters have been distorted by the emanating magic and have only become more evil and powerful. Then he added, considering everything is underwater, veteran or not, he cannot handle it. He wondered how the treasure hunters were able to steal it, how they could withstand such monsters. Was it because of the leader's ability? The leaders who lead the treasure hunters, they used an item that removes the buff, and this sense of solidarity is unique to treasure hunters. Not all treasure hunters are individually strong, but it's precisely because of this solidarity that they inspire fear. Then he said, this leader must be a very smart guy. He sank to his feet and added, in any case, this event cannot be prevented, but he looked at the system window, which said he must complete the physical training quest. The reward is 100 points. He said, of course, there are ways to cope with this. Those who took the item will be in Seoul until the end of this month. He thought he should visit the tech team as soon as the meeting ends. 6 days until the meeting. The remaining time before the meeting was spent training and sparring, climbing a snow-shadowed mountain, physical training, diligent self-improvement, and sleeping less to accumulate magical power through meditation, but most of all, sparring was spent. Because the god of war was the one who received the most requests. Then the protagonist said, next. One of the disciples raised his hand and shouted, now it's his turn. The protagonist looked at him and thought, when rumors spread that he had defeated Master Songa in a duel, disciples began flocking to him, asking for a match. He said that it wasn't worth it. It was annoying. It would have been better if they had all confronted him at once. The disciple stepped forward and said, even if he had defeated Master Kangho, the disciple thought, and Master Songa in a duel, he wants to fight 7 disciples and 7 swordmasters at once? That's ridiculous. And then the disciples began to mutter among themselves. Honestly, young Master Kangho must have lost because he was overconfident, and teacher Songa apparently lost because she couldn't bring her full strength to bear against the young master. Yet she was so proud of it. The next second, the MC swung for a punch, and the student was surprised. What? Disappeared. The next second, a kick landed on his head and he fell to the ground. His comrade cried out in alarm. Is he okay? He replied, how much it hurts. What's more important, behind him. At that moment, the protagonist, with a terrifying smile, appeared behind him, then hit him on the head and followed up with a kick to the ground, sending the student flying into the wall. The others looked at the protagonist in surprise, wondering what he was doing. The protagonist said, well, they must attack. As evening fell, the system reported that the quest had been completed, with 1,570 points earned. He sighed and thought, finally enough. The reason he'd reduced his sleep was because of his stats and skills. The system reported that he had acquired rank A royal dignity for 1,500 points. This trait grants him an additional skill. He has learned rank A suppression. His character trait is rank A royal dignity. A natural talent for managing people, he will easily win their favor and will always be respected. He boosts the morale of allies who follow him, enhances their abilities, and intimidates enemies. Rank A suppression suppresses the opponent's natural charisma. It weakens the opponent's abilities, instilling a stronger sense of fear. The protagonist said he was now looking forward to the meeting. After a while, he sat with the mask on his face and thought he'd forgotten there was still a major obstacle before the meeting. One of the maids said, young master, don't frown when he's wearing a mask. The Holy Sword Clan branch in Seoul. Songa, watching the protagonist tidy up, thought, something's changed in him. She explained how to apply it. It feels like he's gained some self-esteem. Then Sungmin entered the room and asked, young master, how do you like these clothes? The tailor hid them, but he stole them. Or should he look for something that exudes a little more charisma? The protagonist replied, no, even this is too much of something simpler. He responded by shouting that he knew he'd say that. so he'd prepared a black version, or something in the style of a northern Grand Duke. The protagonist looked at the clothes in his hands and thought, huh. Then he asked, Sungmin, hasn't he been beaten in a while? Songa said, Sungmin, he's really bad at choosing clothes. The MC thought, as for him, they were birds of a feather, but 2 heads are better than 1, right? Then Sungmin turned to the clothes racks and said, as he thought expensive ones suit him better. Selma approached him, and he turned around and asked, huh? She said, clothes are clothes, but today the young master is a little off. Something strange is clearly happening to him. He looked surprised. Strange? She replied, yes, for example, there's a pressure emanating from him now that wasn't there before. He smiled, looking at her, then said, so now she, the mentor, experiences what he feels every day. He didn't want to say it, afraid he'd seem impolite. She thought she was a fool for even for a moment hoping for something from such stupidity. Then she replied, yes. After that, Sungmin asked her to help him quickly choose clothes. She wondered if she was just being overly sensitive. At that moment, the protagonist looked at the system windows and, smiling, thought that he was very pleased. At that moment, a subordinate behind him asked his colleague if she had brought the equipment he asked for. She replied, of course. He proposed that today they gamble their careers and create a masterpiece for all time. She smiled, clenched her fist, and said that she would do her best. Then the protagonist turned to him, smiling, and said he wanted to ask them a favor of the woman behind him. After a while, the worker smiled, apologizing, and said that from now on, she would appreciate it if they waited outside. Now it was time to serve the woman he'd requested. The MC stood in the hallway, smiling, and replied, please, they should make it extravagant. The worker replied, okay. He should leave it to her, young master. Then the door slammed shut, and the protagonist thought he can't suffer alone anymore. Songa, she should try too. Then Sungmin walked forward and said, young master, he needs to use the restroom. He replied, okay then, he'll go to the terrace. After a while, he climbed onto the roof and looking ahead, said, what a beautiful view. He placed his hand on the railing and added, somehow he managed to get to the meeting, but there were still many obstacles to overcome to become the successor. But right now, the problem is Kang Ho's return. At that moment, the door behind him opened and he thought, his older sister, so talented, isn't so simple. Junhyun walked onto the roof and said, Baek Jun, when he's stylish, he looks great. She was only visiting briefly because she had some business at the branch office, and she heard he was there. It's hard to have casual conversation in family. She came closer and, leaning on the railing, added, Baek Jun, what should she think of him? He looked surprised. What do you mean? She turned around and told him not to pretend he didn't know. She tilted her head back and added that at first she didn't take him seriously, thinking he wouldn't be able to influence the successor race, but after returning alive, he showed a different side of himself. He demonstrated generosity and talents she hadn't previously suspected, and even earned his father's recognition. He thought, of course, even Muhak's attitude towards him had become unusual. Lately, he'd been monitoring his movements and assessing how he would behave. Junhyun asked if he was really serious about becoming the head of the family. He asked in return, what about her sister? She said she wanted to be. That's what that child wanted, so that's why she said that. Doesn't he want to become her subordinate? He replied in the negative, and she said that she thought so, but he should think about it more. Maybe it would be a way to avoid shedding blood. With that, she left the terrace, and MC thought that child, Junhyun, was especially attached to Jongmin. Her beloved younger brother died under suspicious circumstances, and she even interfered in the succession race to uncover the truth. In other words, wouldn't it be enough to just reveal that Terang was the killer? This guy will be the key. Woohyun. He wonders how is he? Alive and well? Sometime later, Namsan, Golden Lion Guild, Floria Hotel. The photographer looked at the camera and said, wow, what kind of banquet is this? All sorts of celebrities gather here. Jung Sung-hoon, a representative of the Volcanist Blacksmith Guild, walked forward. He smiled as he walked forward and said, yes, please. They should write an article and attach a good photo to it. Next to him was Doko Jun from the group Myeongsung. Sung-hoon, smiling, looked at him and said, oh my god, they haven't seen each other for a long time, brother. In response, he turned his gaze to him and asked, are they close enough to greet each other like this? He asked, hey brother, what's wrong with him? Is he just saying this because he sold a couple of items to Golden Lion? If that's the case, then they will agree on money, and he will make him a couple. He replied, is he an asshole? Thinks his word is worth nothing? At that moment, the successor of the Peng family, Peng Soyoung, approached them. She put her hands on their backs and shouted, enough, they have to come in. The reporters can hear everything. He asked, oh, who is that? It's Soyoung, right? She shouted, if they don't hurry, she'll go first. Sung-hoon replied, she's always so cute, hasn't she grown up? Doesn't she need a weapon? She shouted, I haven't grown up, I don't need one. She offered to come in and talk. At that moment, the photographer said, 2 A-rank hunters, that's rare. His colleague added, well, considering their age, she wouldn't be surprised if they never became S-ranks. And what about Soyoung? Why is it so noisy? Then a car pulled up. The man was surprised. That's the car. The guy next to him shouted, that's the Holy Sword Clan's car. He should quickly turn on the camera. Then Sunga got out of the car and everyone present was surprised. Junhyun? No, it was the mentor who came out first. Terang? This is the first time he's seen this heir. Since Terang is currently attacking the gate, it must be Kang Ho. Is he here as a representative? Then the protagonist got out of the car and asked her to go. Mentor Sunga. She replied, yes, young master. She took his hand and, closing her eyes, said, what is it? She said that he should excuse her for a moment. As they walked along the red carpet, people discussed whether the Holy Sword family had such an heir. Why hadn't Kang Ho arrived? Songa said that she didn't see anyone who looked intimidating. The protagonist thought, so to speak, Songa was always consistent. Then they approached the entrance. A worker said, welcome, they should let him help them. The MC asked, has everyone arrived? Then they went inside, and the worker replied, there are 5 people here. After a short banquet, they will move to the conference room. Well, this way please. The protagonist looked to the side and thought, everything is so shiny. People in the hall started talking among themselves. Who is this? She sees this face for the first time. Oh my god, she wants this dress. The man next to her also looks good, doesn't he? Then Songa grabbed the protagonist's hand tighter. He asked what's wrong with her. She replied that she felt so awkward when everyone was looking at them. He thought that it couldn't be helped. Thanks to royal dignity, it was easy to win people's favor, becoming popular in society. Although it may be a little annoying, it has many advantages. And then the worker said, the conference room they were heading to is right there. Well, have a nice evening. At that moment, Sunmoon appeared in front of them and, coming closer, smiled and said that they haven't seen each other for a long time. MC said, brother, it's nice to meet you. The protagonist said that he hasn't seen him for a long time. Brother Jun. Sunmoon asked, dude, he's grown a lot bigger, hasn't he? It's good to see him getting healthier. The protagonist smiled and thought maybe he was being naive, but this guy is obsessed with money. He's truly manic, bordering on psychosis. As long as he's getting paid, he supplies weapons to all sorts of scum. Then he smiled and said, by the way, back Jun, he told Kang-ho about this. If he comes across any rare materials, please let him know. Jun said, this guy talks about making deals with people at every opportunity. He replied, brother, please, he should look into it. He's been having a hard time lately. He asked, oh, right, but why then did he make a deal with Golden Lion, who offered a lower price than him? He smiled awkwardly and said he'd go talk business. In response, he tsked in annoyance and said he was a cowardly bastard. The protagonist thought Jun, the successor to the Myungsung group. Starting with the guild, he entered various fields, strengthening his influence. Then he told them to ignore what he told him. Oh, by the way, do they have each other's numbers? The MC replied negatively and thought that being the successor to such a group made him practically a prince. But he wasn't arrogant or dishonest. Although he was somewhat cold and distant, he knew how to care for people and help them. He then handed over a business card and said, okay, here. If he needs any help, please contact him anytime. The protagonist took the card and thanked him. He thought it would be a great help during the important event. Then Jun walked forward and waving his hand said, okay, he'll go. They'll meet at the meeting. You should enjoy the banquet before it all starts. The protagonist replied, yes, they'll see each other later. Then Songa took the dessert with special tongs and said, young master, these macarons are so delicious. He replied, she shouldn't get carried away, okay? Otherwise she'll end up like Sunmin. She remembered his face and indignantly shouted, young master, who does he take her for? He smiled and replied that he was joking, that she should eat more and become like Sunmin. At that moment, Song Taehyun, the heir to the Golden Lion Guild, noticed him and asked in surprise, who is this? He is Baekjun, right? The protagonist answered, and that's how they met. He said yes, he had heard a lot about him from brother Kang-ho. What did he say? Oh right, he's the child who was kicked out of his family? Songa's face darkened at these words. He asked, is that true? They say his father threw him out because he was very thin and also hopeless. But that's strange. Then how did a man who was kicked out of his family end up here? And he's not even that thin. Did he get some good elixir? The protagonist thought he was still the same. Arrogant, self-confident, reckless, and ignorant. Maybe because he knows what kind of person he is, he's not angry with him. At that moment, Songa thought, to hell with the consequences. Maybe she should just finish him off and sort things out later? And then Taehyun asked why he was silent. Was he trying to accuse him of something? Maybe he used some illegal substances? Oh, so that's why the engagement. Before he could finish speaking, Yoon Songa grabbed his shoulder and shouted, what is he saying? She was also from the Golden Lion Guild. He looked at her in surprise and asked, what about him? She said, even their father always told them to respect others. If he saw how he was acting, he asked, father? It's funny, if anyone heard her, they would think she was family. She shouldn't cross the line, Songha. She's just a homeless woman who was picked up by her father because he pitied her. She shouldn't act like she's his older sister. It's disgusting. She silently lowered her gaze, and then he added, he was very amused. She came and started spouting nonsense. At that moment, his subordinate whispered, young master, that man has arrived. He asked, when? Really? He replied that he just received a message. How about the gift he prepared? He replied, bring it here quickly. Then he turned around and said he was busy, so they'd see each other at the meeting. They then walked on, and Songa, approaching the protagonist, apologized. She shouldn't have said all the words to the heir of the Golden Lion. If he forgives her, she will somehow make it up to him. The protagonist said that everything is fine. She only showed what decent behavior is, right, Teacher Songa? She, still angry, said that if he, the young master, gave the order, she would rip his head off right then and there. At that moment, the MC covered her mouth and, smiling awkwardly, said that they said she was gaining popularity as a swordmaster and that she was known as a Golden Lion hunter. She lowered her head and said that it was simply her duty, since she could not afford to tarnish her father's reputation. The protagonist asked, by the way, how was Song Dae-san? He had heard that his condition had worsened recently. She said that for now he was in the hospital, but not long ago he had started talking a little. The protagonist said that this was good. He thought Dae-san was the current leader of the Golden Lion Guild, a man whom Song-ha respected like a father. It seemed she believed that he would recover. Unfortunately, he would die. Whatever happens, it cannot be stopped. Then he bowed and said that he hoped that he would recover soon. She said yes. She once again apologized for her brother. Then she stepped forward and, turning slightly, added that they would see each other later in the conference room. Songa said, they're so different. The protagonist responded, Like heaven and earth, he completely agrees. Songa said they should go too. Then a cry rang out from behind them. Oh, that person. She's one of those people who's never attended a meeting in her life, and yet she seems so beautiful. The heiress of the Soyeon Magical Tower stepped forward.